Hey now, good Monday afternoon. Welcome to 580 Sports Talk. I'm Brendan Dworzinski. He is Dan Lucero. We are here with you for the next 3 hours talking all things NCAA tournament on the Lewis Toyota Road to a championship, including the Kansas State Wildcats heading to the Sweet 16 for the first time in 5 years. What an accomplishment for Jerome Tang's Wildcats. We will talk all about their win for the Purple Wildcats over the Blue Wildcats yesterday down in Greensboro. The huge game for Marquise Noel. Some disrespect from all sorts of different angles toward the K-State team, like John Calipari calling Marquise Noel little guy, little kid, whatever he called him. Jeff Goodman trying to burn Kentucky by saying that they lost to the team picked to finish last in the Big 12, as if K-State didn't spend a large portion of the year ranked in the top 15 in the country and get a number 3 seed. Weird disrespect all over the place. Maybe you even think it's disrespectful that they're an underdog going into the Sweet 16 matchup with 7-seeded Michigan State. We're going to talk about all that coming up here. And again, what an accomplishment for the Cats. This is, by the way, in case this is a surprise to anyone, the best first year in K-State history for a head coach. No head coach has ever gotten K-State this far in their first year. That's incredible. It's the it is the second furthest that K-State has ever gone since the tournament became a 64-team tournament. They've never been to the Final Four during that time. They've been to the Elite Eight twice. This is year one for Jerome Tang with a brand new roster, and they got there in 1 year. Truly, truly incredible stuff. So we're going to talk about all that coming up here in just a few moments. We've also got a post-mortem for KU basketball today. Jayhawk season and their title defense came to a close with a heartbreaking loss to the Arkansas Razorbacks this past Saturday. Dan and I were there for that one. Arkansas fans were all over our YouTube page watching our post-game video in which we praised Arkansas a lot. And
some people noticed that. Other people disregarded it.
Yeah, some people were very kind. We appreciate a lot of the very kind Arkansas fans who jumped in and said, very classy, great game. Hope Bill Self is okay, woo pig. Y'all are great. Y'all are good in my book. The folks who said we weren't giving Arkansas any respect, I would like to get both your ears and eyes checked post-haste because I'm not sure what you were watching. Anyway, we were there for that game. We'll talk a little bit more about it, what this offseason is going to look like for Kansas, and what things look like going forward, because KU's going to lose a lot of players to the transfer portal, to graduation, etc. Bill Self is going to be back, but what's the long-term prognosis at this point for what Kansas basketball is going to look like? So we'll get to some of that coming up in the 4 o'clock hour today. We've also got some other tournament reaction, Big 12, how it has performed so far, some of the best games from the tournament, why nobody can shoot three-pointers during March Madness this year, and a look ahead to the rest of the Sweet 16. We've got some Chiefs and NFL news and notes to get to. Matt Verderame will join us later this hour for our weekly talk about all things NFL. We've got What Is Wrong With You, our 580 Sports Talk headlines, all that and so much more coming up over the next 3 hours right here on 580 Sports Talk. Of course, you can be part of the show on the text line, 785-272-9429. And you can hop into the comment section on YouTube as well. Sports on 580 WIBW is the channel. Go subscribe, by the way, if you haven't. We're almost to 200 now. It was just a couple weeks ago we said, hey, let's get to 100. We'll be feeling good. We're almost to 200 now. So thank you to everyone who has subscribed. And hopefully, if you haven't yet, you go do that right now. Again, our channel is Sports on 580 WIBW. Let's get to the Kansas State Wildcats. The Purple Wildcats knock off the Blue Wildcats in the Battle of the Wildcats yesterday afternoon. And before we look ahead to what the Sweet 16 is going to look like and just how great this accomplishment is for Jerome Tang's team in his first season at the helm, was there a specific moment or a specific trend, Dan, you noticed in the game that made you feel like K-State is actually going to get that done? We talk about this a lot. We bring up this question a lot after big games, big moments, especially with the Chiefs. Usually it's, oh, well, they were down 21, but then Patrick Mahomes threw an 80-yard pass, so I knew they were going to win then. But for this game, I thought it was a fairly evenly played game for most of the contest, but honestly, even though it was close, I thought K-State was the dominant team in the second half. I really thought early in the second half, when it became clear that they figured out how to essentially take Sheboygan out of the game, K-State was in control for the majority of the, even when they went down by, I think it was 4 with 4 minutes to go. I thought, nah, K-State's going to come back in this game. They just felt like the better team after halftime.
There were two things that I saw that made me feel relatively confident And I say relatively confident because, in a game that was that close and between two teams that were so evenly matched, I think going into yesterday, they were separated by 0 spots in the Ken Palm. I think going into yesterday, K-State was either 21st or 22nd, and Kentucky was 1 spot behind them in the Ken Palm rankings. They were so close, so closely matched. And I thought the game reflected that for the better part of the 40 minutes. But there were 2 things that I saw in the first half. One was that the effort level was absolutely where it had to be. That David Gasson and Ish Massoud and Naquan Tomlin and Bebe Igiola, everybody who had the Herculean task of trying to keep Oscar Tshiebwe off the boards was at the very least up for the challenge. That the effort level was immense for Kansas State. You could sense that within the first 5-10 minutes, that if they were going to get beat, it wasn't going to be because they weren't locked in and they weren't giving appropriate effort.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they were ready for the physical challenge of playing a bigger team and a dominant rebounding team, one of the very best offensive rebounding teams in the country. They were up for it. You could sense that early. The other thing I saw that made me feel good was the stretch late in the first half where Marquise Noel is out there throwing and one mixtape dimes in fast break. Behind the back to Keontae Johnson for a dunk, through the legs for another opportunity at the foul line.
Yep.
When Noel is playing like that, that confidence is so magnetic. It is so contagious for that Kansas State team. If they were going to beat Kentucky, because there were going to be points in that game, and early in the second half, we saw it, where their size and their athleticism were going to wear Kansas State out. They were going to go on a run, and they did. They led by 8. I think it was 39-31 pretty early in the second half. But if Kansas State was going to win, it was going to be vital that they played with the confidence for 40 minutes. Because when they play confident, they don't turn the ball over. When they play confident, they make shots. When they play confident, they run good stuff in the half court. When they play confident, they get stops, big stops when they have to have them. And it speaks to, I think, the broader theme that this Kansas State team has embraced going into this tournament run and really throughout the season. The idea of having crazy faith, the idea of having such strong belief in yourself, in your teammates, in your coaches, in your ability to win, that from the outside, it looks and it sounds crazy. That's the whole idea.
Mm-hmm.
It was crazy, some of the shots that Kansas State took and made in the final 5 minutes of that game. The step back 3 from Noel after they fell behind by 4. Lance Ware got the dunk for Kentucky, and it's a 4-point game with about 3.5 minutes left. And it's starting to not feel good because Kentucky had at that point, it felt like, figured out how to get a basket anytime they wanted it. They'd figured out the offense. Cason Wallace was very active, and you felt like if they missed, they were going to get a second chance and just keep getting chances until they scored. So Kansas State was going to have to match them on offense and probably exceed them. They were going to have to make some threes.
Mm-hmm.
Noel makes that step back 3 to make it 60-59, and that was the first point at which I thought, okay, I think the dam broke.
That was the one for me. When he hit that big, high-arcing 3, I thought back, and I think I said this on the air, and I hope I did, because otherwise I'm going to sound like I'm being a front runner here. But I remember thinking, if not saying, at some point in this tournament, Marquise Noel is either going to become a March hero or is going to end up costing K-State a game, because he's been way more good than bad this year. But occasionally you get a little bit of that old Marquise Noel, and I think we all remember that from last season. Things can get a little bit sloppy. Things can get a little bit off the rails, out of control. We got the hero version of Marquise Noel. He was composed. He was calm. K-State showed what we talked about for Kansas going into this weekend, that the composure, the calmness, that was the thing that would possibly help KU to overcome against Arkansas. Now, I don't think they got out of whack, but they ended up losing that game. K-State was not shaken when they went down by 4 with 4 minutes left in the game. They went on a 19-9 run to end that contest after they went down. They were poised. They were calm. Nobody freaked out. Keontae Johnson didn't go into a freak out moment after he struggled to start the game. What was he, 3 of 11 at one point from the floor?
I think so.
He was really struggling early on. Looked like he was playing tight. but never panicked. And I think that is a credit to the coaching staff. I think that is a credit to the players who have, even though a lot of these guys are older, they have had to mature to the Big 12 level very quickly and to the extreme intense competition level very quickly. I was just incredibly impressed by the way they were able to be resilient down the stretch and show fearlessness, really, even more than composure. I think it was just fearlessness. Nobody was stopping Marquise Noel at the end of that game. Nobody. I don't care who. It could have been prime Sonics Gary Payton. No one was stopping Marquise Noel at the end of that game.
Yeah, playing with tremendous confidence, and when he gets into attack mode like that and he's making those threes. I saw a lot on social media after the game, people complaining about, I don't understand why Kentucky's blitzing Marquise Noel off of these screens when he's 30, 35 feet from the basket. It's like, because he will shoot from there. That's why.
Yeah.
That's why. And he'll make it from there. He made a couple of big ones in that second half. Ish Massoud hitting from Curry range to give Kansas State the lead. Like, your only shot of the game that you make. Where does that come from? That's crazy faith, to have that kind of confidence in yourself. For the rest of those K-Staters to have that confidence in Ish Massoud. I don't know if everybody saw the locker room footage that went around social media after the game. Jerome Tang allowed Massoud to put the K-State sticker on the banner advancing Kansas State to the Sweet 16 that they do. They move you up on the bracket, and he gave the Kansas State nameplate to Ish Massoud and said, I knew he was going to make that shot. Like, I did not know Ish Massoud was going to make that shot, but I think he did, and I know his teammates did, and I know his coaches believed in him. And then Keontae Johnson, not a great game for him. He was frustrated by what Kentucky threw at him defensively. It was very clear he was priority A for Kentucky. They felt like if they stopped Keontae Johnson, they would win the game. And he hits the step back three dagger that really swung the game for good in Kansas State's favor. It was just such a gutsy performance, and it just speaks to that team's character and that team's confidence. And now 3 of these guys who are New York guys get to extend their college careers in the Mecca, go play at Madison Square Garden. And it's going to be a matchup of New York City point guards in the Sweet 16. Noel going up against Tyson Walker, who's from Long Island, played his college ball in Queens. Like, some of this stuff you just feel like you couldn't script with what Kansas State has done this year. Like, Hollywood would reject it. And that's what we're seeing from the Wildcats. They earned this win. I want to speak to one other thing that I think showed just how locked in they were. And it's the 8 turnovers. And it's not just the 8 turnovers. It's that of the 8 turnovers, I'm struggling to think of one. Like, if you watch Kansas State play games this year, and particularly if you watched them lose, or you watched them play games where they turned it over a bunch, like 17, 18, 19, 20 times, a lot of those turnovers felt like, I don't know of a better way to describe them than brain cramps. Like, there was one in the Big 12 tournament against TCU where they turned it over on an inbound. Like, they were inbounding after a basket, and Keontae tried to throw it into Noel and just overthrew him and threw it out of bounds at midcourt. Like, brain cramp turnovers that there's really no excuse for. Like, sometimes, hey, like Oscar Tshiebwe jumps a passing route, makes a good anticipation play on a pick and roll. Hey, you know what? Sometimes the defense makes a play. You're not going to go through a game turnover free. I don't. That hasn't really happened a lot in the history of college basketball. Sometimes the defense just makes the play. Yeah. Sometimes you dribble into trouble and they get a hand on a ball and the bounce goes the other way. But those mental lapse turnovers that we would see from Kansas State at times, they didn't have a single one of those in that game. And I just think that's how locked in they were in that game, how determined they were in that game, how much they understood that if we value the basketball and we get up shots, we're going to have an opportunity to win this game. Because the thing about playing Kentucky, particularly when you are Kansas State and one of the worst defensive rebounding teams in the country, Kentucky's going to get a lot of shots. Kentucky's going to get a lot of second chances, and they did. They had 17 second chance points in that game. So Kansas State knew they could not afford empty possessions. If they got a shot up every possession, they would be in good shape. Yep. Because there weren't going to be a lot of possessions where they got 2, and they could not afford any where they got 0. And so they played about as good a game as it's possible to play from that standpoint. And again, that speaks to what the coaching staff emphasized, what the veteran leaders on this team emphasized, and just how locked in they were for that game.
Yeah, it was about as good of a game as you could have expected for a matchup that I think most people thought would be not impossible, but a tough matchup. Now, you want to talk about matchups. K-State, as locked in as they are and as well as they played in terms of not giving the ball away, Marquette, I think, would have been the single toughest matchup just in terms of styles in the East region.
I agree.
Not to say Michigan State can't beat K-State. They can. Not to say Tennessee can't, or hell, even Florida Atlantic, if they play well. They won 31 games in the regular season for a reason. But in terms of just what they do as a strength versus what you are as a weakness, Marquette was the worst matchup in the entire bracket for K-State, at least in the East region. Marquette's out. Michigan State got them. You brought up the point. I don't remember if it was on the show or if it was on one of our YouTube live streams about how young Marquette is.
One of the youngest teams in the whole tournament, if not the youngest.
And Michigan State is old. Michigan State got them out of there. This is going to be a tough matchup for K-State because you've got to go up against, and as much as Tom Izzo sometimes annoys me, you don't get to 8 Final Fours in your career by accident, right? Like, that's not just something that happens. Whoops, can't believe that happened 8 times. No, he's a hell of a coach and has had a ton of success at this time of year. But if you're K-State, you've already beaten multiple Hall of Famers this year. You just beat John Calipari in a winner-go-home game. You already beat Bill Self in a game this year. In overtime, a 1-point game. Do you know how many coaches have lost all or almost all of their 1-point games against Bill Self? Most. He's got an incredible record in those games. K-State's already got those this year. You got through the gauntlet of Big 12 play with a good record and earned that 3rd seed and all of that. So that's one storyline, obviously. Can what's essentially been a team of giant killers this year, I mean, K-State is almost a giant themselves the season they've had, but in terms of these coaching monoliths they've beaten, they've been kind of giant killers.
And I think Jerome Tang has tipped his hand on how he feels on that front when he said after yesterday's game, you can talk about coaching all you want. What it comes down to is dudes. And Kansas State has those.
Yep.
They have guys who aren't afraid of the moment. They have guys who played a lot of college basketball, and they've got guys and had guys yesterday who rose to that occasion. I want to address this. So we got a question in on the YouTube comments, and we appreciate anybody listening, watching us on YouTube. You can hit us up in the YouTube comments. We'll get to some texts as well. 785-272-9429 is the text line. Our guy Vance asked what our opinion was of the officiating in K-State, Kentucky. To call it subpar would be a compliment in my book, per Vance. To address that question, it was not good. But if that was surprising to you, that must have been the first college basketball game you've watched this year. College basketball officiating, as a general rule, is iffy. And there were a couple of calls, certainly, that I understand why Kentucky fans, for instance, don't understand how Marquise Noel got 2 free throws on a play where he was very clearly trying to pass the ball. That was hilarious. So the best part was Noel standing at the free throw line making like the shooting motion with his hands, like, it's a shooting foul. The hell are you talking about? Yeah. Obviously I was shooting. I sold it.
No, he did a great job of that. I would say that it was bad officiating without being destructive officiating. Like, I don't think they did anything during, like, that changed the course of the game. But, like, they missed it wasn't Shibwe. It was the other big for Kentucky who had just the most egregious travel in the entire world. He did the Dwayne Wade.
Shibwe. Yeah, he cut the ball to the foul line and took like 4 steps.
It was, oh my God, I got to look.
It was in the first half. Maybe you're thinking of a different one. But
I'm thinking of a second half.
I remember one in the first half where Shibwe caught a pass at the top of the key and then like did a pirouette, like a full like 1, 2, 3 step pirouette.
No,
and
I
they
remember
missed the travel call.
I know which one you're talking about too. I want to say it was Lance Ware. That's who it was. It was Lance Ware. He caught a rebound about halfway down the lane, then shuffled his feet about 6 times and landed it. Abby, my wife, sitting next to me, is like, how was that not a travel? And then they zoomed in and I said, yeah, honey, I can't tell you. Like, that was as blatant as can be.
Wasn't a real well officiated game. If that's what Kentucky fans want to complain about, rather than complaining about the fact that their 2 best shooters went 2 for 27 from the field, that Antonio Reeves didn't make anything until it was literally too late to make a difference. If that's what you want to be mad about instead, if you're a Kentucky fan, be my guest.
One thing I want to add about New York and how big of a deal, Mr. New York City, that's Marquise Noel's Twitter name. K-State's got 4 dudes from New York on this team, right?
Is it 4?
I think it's 4.
I thought it was 3. I thought it was Tomlin, Massoud, and Noel.
Now I got to pull this up and double check. I thought I had, well, maybe I just misheard something. I thought it was 4, but it might just be 3.
Maybe one of the red shirts is.
Tyke Green.
Oh, Tyke's from New York.
Yeah, Tyke Green is from Queens.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I don't know how I forgot Tyke. I knew he played college ball in New York. But...
Yes. And then, Tomlin, Masood, and Noel.
So Tomlin's never played an organized basketball game in his home state.
Is it his home state or just his hometown? Because he did play JUCO ball, and I had to look this up. He played JUCO ball at Monroe Community College, which is in Rochester, but he's from New York City. The first game he ever plays within the city limits of New York City will be at Madison Square Garden.
That's what it is. Hometown, not home state. Yeah. First game in New York. Like he's played Rucker, but now he's playing the Mecca. And I cannot imagine, particularly for Noel, who is so New York City, that it's even in his Twitter name and his Instagram handle. Like, to step on that floor in that building, he may ascend. He may go for 50 and 20 dimes. Like, honestly, I wouldn't put anything past Marquise Noel playing on that stage.
No, absolutely not. We will talk more tournament coming on a little bit later in the show. We'll get some full tournament reaction. Plus, we've got a little bit of a schedule switch today. We're actually going to talk KU later this hour. Matt Verderame will join us next hour. Slight delay for Matt, so we'll talk to him about all things NFL coming up at 4 o'clock today. KU coming up later, but right now we'll get to a quick break. We've got the good, the bad, and the ugly from the weekend after this on 580 Sports Talk. Let's recap the weekend with the good, the bad, and the ugly here on 580 Sports Talk with Brendan and Dan. A lot to get to from the weekend. We're going to talk so much NCAA tournament throughout the course of the show. I'm going to go a little off the beaten path in that regard. How about some other local teams making a big impact? Not in the NCAA tournament, but the women's NIT, K-State and KU, both advancing in those respective tournaments. The K-State women will play tomorrow night. Tonight, we get a border war at Allen Fieldhouse. How about that? KU versus Mizzou, border war, border showdown in the women's NIT 6:30 tip. So if you're a KU fan, you want to just go for the environment. I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it, but that's awesome. Like that should be probably not 16-3, but that should be a fairly packed house for a KU women's game coming up tonight. So excited for that. Hopefully KU wins and doesn't give Missouri any sort of bragging rights for a postseason game in Allen Fieldhouse. Also, speaking of local athletes, just kind of going around the horn here, Corey Ballantyne re-signed with the Green Bay Packers today. Very excited there.
Washburn and Shawnee Heights, great. Yeah. Good to see him starting to carve out a niche, carve out a lane in his NFL career.
Yeah, he's really become more of a core special teamer, I think. But, man, I don't care if you're playing offense, defense, special teams, fast is fast. And Packers signed him late last season, and he became a core special teamer. And if Rich Bisaccia likes you, we have found out in the recent years, you're going to have a job in the NFL because that means you're pretty darn good at what you do. So very happy for Corey.
My good for the weekend, Des Moines is a tournament site. I said this on my Twitter account at Dan Lucero Show. I really thought Des Moines was a terrific site for the NCAA tournament. It took a long time for the city to get the tournament. They used to bid on it and get beat a lot. I think 2016 was the first time that they'd had the NCAA tournament in its current form at the Wells Fargo Arena in downtown Des Moines. And I think it should be there a lot more often. I'll tell you what, that arena seats about 15, 16,000. Great atmosphere for every game because you've got passionate fan bases that can get to Des Moines really easily. Yep. Kansas, Arkansas was as good an atmosphere for a college basketball game as you can ask for. It felt kind of like a 50-50 split in that building for that first, second round game on Saturday. But Texas traveled well. Texas A&M traveled really well. And then the factor you get in a place like Des Moines, which is not typically a big event town, is when there's a big event, the locals turn out. So you had a lot of people walking around Wells Fargo Arena in Iowa State gear or Iowa gear or Drake gear or local high school stuff. And they packed the place out and they appreciated the ball games those 2 days. Downtown Des Moines, pretty easy to get around. I like the city. Great tournament host. And I hope to return very soon.
Even staying out, because we stayed at a hotel in the suburbs.
Yeah, we stay in Ankeny.
And hop right on the interstate, takes you right into downtown. Like the exit is right at the arena. Incredibly easy to get around. Friendly people, great site for it. You and I said this a bunch during the course of the weekend, but towns in, especially this area of the country, greater area of the country, where people really care about college sports, local teams or otherwise. There's not another show in town in terms of a pro sport right now. So you're talking specifically NBA, but NHL too. That's why Wichita, Des Moines, Omaha, Kansas City, these towns are so good for these things. And it was awesome. They did a phenomenal job. Probably one or two for my favorite place that I've covered the tournament before in the last 4 I've been to. My bad is also my ugly, is also my worst thing that ever happened to me watching a sporting event, is also the reason why I almost just gave up watching basketball the rest of my life. The bad beat last night in Gonzaga versus TCU is the stuff that night terrors are made from. It made me want to throw up. It made me want to scream. I almost gave up sports. Like I put on my Twitter, I'm going to give up all my worldly possessions, walk into the woods, and never come back. It was disgusting. It was filthy. I love bad beats on SportsCenter with Scott Van Pelt as much as anyone. I don't know that I can watch tonight. Like it was that sickening. So if you didn't see it, this is so grotesque. Gonzaga's up 4 with, I think it was 3 seconds left. And I thought, God dang it, they're inbounding. As we saw in the KU game, with that little time in a close game, there's no guarantee you get the foul right away.
The context here is that Gonzaga was favored by 4.5 points.
Thank you. So in a 4.5 point spread, Gonzaga's up by 4. I thought, God dang it, they're not going to go to the line because there's no way TCU can come back. They're not going to foul. With 0.7 of a second left, TCU fouls Gonzaga. Gonzaga goes to the line, hits 2 free throws, all the way to Cover Town.
You think you've received a gift from the gambling god?
I thought, all right, Frogs, great job. I don't know if Jamie Dixon called that, but great job, Frogs. Knew you weren't going to give up. Loved the attempt to extend the game. Gonzaga's up 6. They're covering. The spread's 4.5. No way anything could go wrong with 7/10 of a second left, could it? No chance. And TCU rolls the ball in.
All the way to midcourt.
There's no such thing as a 6-point play. Even a 3-pointer with a technical foul is only getting you 5 points, right? You're not getting to 6. They roll the ball in. No one touched it till Damian Baugh picks it up just past center court. And with 7/10 of a second left, and Gonzaga already halfway back to Spokane, Damian Baugh puts up and makes a 3-pointer as time expires.
But the bottom of the net, when I tell you it was the loudest swish sound I've ever heard on a television broadcast, like the cleanest, crispest swish from a team that was one of the worst in the country at shooting 3-pointers this year.
I put my hand around my face and I just screamed, "No!" I could not believe it. Like I sat through the horrible beat that was KU going 5 minutes without scoring in a game last year to miss their team total by 1 point.
I remember.
This was 100 times worse. Incomparably bad. I'm not over it. I don't know that I ever will be. And I will never say a nice thing about TCU again. I can't. Dude, it's been like 18 hours. No, it's been more than that. I can't do it. I'm so upset.
Damian Baugh picked the precise right moment to turn into Klay Thompson.
It is on site with him. Let me tell you about that heave, Damian Baugh. God, I'm sick to my stomach. Do you have a bad or an ugly or a miserable?
Not like that. My bad. And I took some heat on Twitter for saying this because I like Eric Musselman and I have a lot of regard for him as a head coach.
Yeah.
But Musselman ripping his shirt off on the floor in the celebration, I know that read to some people who do not know me and do not know that I am not, in fact, a fan of the University of Kansas or its athletic department. Maybe that read as sour grapes. I'm here to tell you it's not. I think it's embarrassing that Musselman does that on the court. I know, like, he's done it before. It's like his brand now is, hey, he's the coach who takes off his shirt. The reason I think it's embarrassing is it puts all the spotlight on him in a moment where it should be on his players and what they did.
It should be on Devo Davis for being the best player on the floor.
Jordan Walsh for absolutely having Jalen Wilson in the deepest part of hell for the second half of that basketball game. Like, the spotlight should be on your kids who overcame a disappointing regular season, some injuries, a really rough finish to the regular season, and then regrouped and took down the defending champions. That's who the spotlight should be on, not the middle-aged man taking off his shirt and standing on the scores table. That's so look at me to me, and that's not what a coach should be doing, because that's I don't like it. I don't care for that bit of Eric Musselman MO. And I just don't care for that at all.
No, I get that completely. I actually think that's a great argument. I hadn't even considered that angle. I think a lot of KU fans were upset about it, and there was a lot of and you're emotional after a game. I get it. I totally understand. There's a lot of, act like you've been there before. Our coach, Bill Self, never took his shirt off. I think most people are like, yes, please, Bill Self, do not take your shirt off. But, like, look, if you don't want it to happen, beat them. It's like the court storming thing, right? If you don't want them to rush the court on you, you don't want them to rush the field on you, we'll beat them. And I know he's done it before, and that's just kind of his thing in these big games. And, hey, if you're KU, that's a compliment. This was a big enough game that a 50-something-year-old man took a shirt off during. Like, okay, fine. The one thing that rubbed me the wrong way, Arkansas has been really good for years now.
Yes, this is their third straight Sweet 16.
Like, that's good. They've been to the Elite Eight at least. Was it 2 years ago they went to the Elite Eight? And last year they lost to Duke?
Yeah. I think the last 2 years they've been to the Elite Eight.
They've had deep runs. They've been either one of the 8 or 16 last teams in the country to play each of the last 2 years. Like, if you beat KU even next weekend, you know what? All's fair game. It's a huge game, whatever.
To give Musselman credit, he did say in the postgame that one of the reasons that this game meant so much was because it was Kansas.
Yeah.
Because of who Kansas is and what they represent in college basketball. So there is an element of respect to it that I'll acknowledge here. But I just think, I think it's a look at me gesture that
Totally fair.
like if you do it in the locker room and then it goes viral, then we all have a good laugh at it. But when you're doing it out in front of everybody,
yeah.
Like I in that moment, I think you're taking the shine away from who it really belongs on, and that's your players.
Totally fair.
That's just my opinion on that. My ugly. John L. Davis, is that the kid's name for FAU?
Yeah.
John L. Davis. He's doing his post-game interview after they beat Fairleigh Dickinson yesterday, and he said a 4-letter word that I cannot repeat on the radio. Not the bad 4-letter word that Drew Timme would later say in his post-game interview, but a certain 4-letter word that you're not allowed to say on television. He, unlike Timme, realized his mistake right away and apologized for it. And Jamie Erdahl, the sideline reporter, said, yeah, that's no big deal. Hey, we're on True TV. It's fine. Yeah, we know it's not a big deal on True TV because you know what else they show on True TV in the middle of the day? On Saturday, Brendan and I are at a restaurant in Ankeny.
I was wondering where this was going.
Watching the opening game of the tournament, right? CBS has the only game early Saturday. That was the Furman-San Diego State game. All the other TVs are on the other NCAA tournament channels ready to rock and roll. You've got a TV on TNT. They were showing a movie with The Rock. They had a TV on TBS. They were showing Friends. They had a TV on True TV. And they were showing a 2011 comedy called The Change-Up, featuring Ryan Reynolds and Jason Bateman. Terrible reviews for this movie, by the way, a 26 on Rotten Tomatoes. And in the opening scene, Jason Bateman, devoted family man and lawyer, is changing diapers. And what do we see? To our shock and horror,
in a restaurant, what we are eating.
We're in the middle of eating. While I'm trying to eat chicken wings at 11:35 on a Saturday morning in the heart of America, Iowa. Uncensored male baby nudity on television. I don't know that it was really a baby. It could have been a prosthetic, but it was male nudity on television in front of God and everybody in this old Chicago.
It was like us and a bunch of old folks who were there.
It was horrifying. I didn't need to see it.
No, I don't know if it was like commercial break or my eyes just darted over and I thought, oh my God, yeah. Suffice to say, I am not going to ever watch that movie again.
No.
We saw it without sound. I don't need the sound on.
It was a terrible omen for the rest of the day.
Really was.
Child nudity, apparently cool on True TV. So I don't think Janelle Davis has to worry about saying the S word.
We need to take a quick break. We're going to come right back after this. We've got some KU basketball to talk about on 580 Sports Talk. Brendan and Dan here with you on 580 Sports Talk on this Monday, March 20th. Usually at this time we would talk to Matt Verderame, but a little bit of a delay with Matt. So we'll talk to him at the top of next hour instead. Talk all things NFL free agency. We have some texters who have some gambling thoughts, or thoughts about my gambling anyway.
Yeah, from the 816 on the text line, regarding your bad beat at the end of TCU Gonzaga, that meaningless Damian Baugh 3 that took Gonzaga's 6-point lead down to 3 and ruined your Gonzaga -4.5 ticket.
Burned Cover Town to the ground.
Texter from the 816 says 7-2 odds you get over it and bet again, which what would those be? 7-2 is plus 350. I think.
Yeah, well, that's horrible. It's like minus 350, honestly. I'm literally looking at my women's tournament picks for today right now. So I've got a system.
Yeah, if you're offering me plus 350 odds that Brendan will get over it and bet again, I would have put my life savings on that.
Yeah, I would like to make this clear. I felt like not doing that. But I'm
Also, from the 785, when I said it was the loudest swish in the history of televised sports, that swish by Damian Baugh, from the 785, Dan, you sure that swish sound wasn't Brendan's reason for living crashing to the floor?
No, that pretty much was it.
No, I think I heard like a guttural moan all the way from Lawrence.
Dude, it was just such a miserable moment. I could not believe it. I was so ready. I've got a running tally of like how I've done during the tournament, during the year.
Then
I was so ready to update it. And then
you got to hear Avery Johnson talking about it too. Like,
hey, I bet somebody was upset about that. I'm not going to touch that. I will fight you right now, Avery Johnson, right now on site. Oh my God. I could not. Oh, that was so frustrating. And it was the last game too.
Yeah.
Like there was
you got to go to bed on that. Yeah.
You know what? Well, at least I still got Miami, Indiana. I can still try to catch up. No, nothing like that. Not a thing.
I won every bet I made yesterday.
Oh, well, isn't that freaking awesome for you?
It was after I lost every one I made on Saturday.
I've been like exactly 50% almost all weekend until last night. I wanted to get to this on KU really quick before we get to the top of the hour. We've already been over a lot of what happened in the game. And if you want to get our full live reaction to it after it happened on Saturday, please head to our YouTube channel. Sports on 580 WIBW is where you can find it. We're a little short on time. And also we're already 2 days past the game. Everybody has heard all the discussion about it at this point.
Yeah. If you missed anything that we had to say about it in the moment, it's on the YouTube page.
And I think we did a good job of breaking it down. And look, I think in retrospect, it was a pretty easy game to break down. KU played really well early. In the second half, Arkansas adjusted defensively. KU had too many cold streaks from the floor. They had a stretch of 4+ minutes without a bucket, and then they ended the game, the final 3 minutes and 48 seconds, without a field goal. I mean, and you didn't have Bill Self at the end of the game. It's not Norm Roberts' fault. He is not Bill Self, but he is not Bill Self. And in a situation where, hey, there's 1:29 to go, we need a basket right here, and you end up not getting off a clean shot, and Kevin McCullough and Jalen Wilson end up in the same corner at the same time. That's when you miss Bill Self the most. It sucks, but you got to play the hand you're dealt, and KU busted.
We had a texter point this out too, and it's something we talked about in relation to Kansas State and how locked in they felt, and how you didn't have some of the mistakes, some of the brain cramp stuff that you would get on occasion from Kansas State at sometimes in the regular season, for them to only turn the ball over 8 times against that athletic and long Kentucky team. Kansas made a couple of really uncharacteristic mistakes in that basketball game. They had a 5-second violation, which they almost never have.
Yep.
DeJuan Harris apparently forgot the rule about a 10-second violation. And that was a big moment in the game because Kansas had just gone up 4 and gotten a defensive rebound. They got to stop. They got a board. They were coming the other way, up 4, late second half, I think it was, and they commit that 10-second violation, and that's what our texter from the 785 pointed out on the text line. Like, that can't happen, and you never see Kansas make those plays. You never see Kansas shot clock violation in the final minute of a tie game, and I think that Bill Self. And it's not just us saying this because we cover Kansas because you have it says University of Kansas on your diploma. It's not us saying this. It's Bill Self's peers resoundingly that say there's nobody better at this than he is right now.
I mean, look at his record in close games. It's preposterous.
And I think if you asked any other, any other team with a great head coach, like, hey, we're entrusting this win or go home game to your top assistant. Like, are they going to feel great about it? Are they going to expect there might be some bobbles, some bumps in the road? And I think there certainly were for Kansas that were uncharacteristic. And it's too bad. And it's nobody's fault. Like you said, it's cruel to blame Norm Roberts for it. I don't think he deserves the blame. But I certainly think it was a different team without Bill Self stalking the sidelines. Just it has to be. He's that great at what he does.
Yeah, it's tough, but hey, it is what it is. And I don't think I'm alone in saying this. In fact, I know I have friends who feel the same way. It sucks to get bounced first weekend, but you're also in good company because now 7 champions in a row have missed the Sweet 16 the following year, which is really almost unthinkable. And also, it's a little different when you come off a national championship. Like, if KU lost that game to North Carolina last year or had gotten bounced by somebody else in the tournament, they lose that close game to Creighton in the second round, I'm feeling a lot different this year. But hey, I mean, it sucks, and I'm upset about it, and it sucks that that's the way Jalen Wilson's career came to an end, among other things. But, that's the tournament. As I said, both on Twitter and on our YouTube stream, it's the beauty of the tournament, and it's also the tragedy of it. When it happens to someone else, oh, my God, March Madness is awesome. When it happens to you, wow, this sucks. I hate this. What a terrible way to determine a champion, but that's what it is.
It's 67 teams whose season ends on a loss.
Yeah.
We've had we've had a lot of them already here in the first 2 weeks. We're down to 16. That means we've had 48 teams, and their season ends with a loss. It may have been a great regular season. It may have been a disappointing regular season, but the common denominator is for 67 to the 68 teams, you get to that tournament. And that's what you work for. That's what you sweat for. That's what you bleed for. And for 67 of the 68 teams, which is a staggeringly high percentage, it ends in a loss. And I mean, if you're a defending champion, it's so hard to defend titles. If it weren't, it would happen a lot more often. Like in my lifetime, it's Florida and it's Duke. Yeah. And that's it in my lifetime. And I mean, I haven't been around that long, but I've been around a little bit. If you are a defending champion, the thing that you can ask for is if you're going to go out in your shield. And I think Kansas did that. Losing by 1 in that game to that team, a team that was dramatically underseeded as an 8, a team that team that frankly has more future NBA guys than Kansas does. Like they went out on their shield. It could have been different if any one possession in that game goes differently. If they don't miss the 2 front ends of the 1-and-1s, if they don't have that 10-second violation with a 4-point lead, if they get a shot up in with a minute left in a tie game, if Ricky Council doesn't get one of those fall away jumpers to the front rim, different game. Those are the margins on which March stories are written.
And it was still a great season for KU. I know you got to get to the second weekend to really feel like you accomplished something, but hey, you won the Big 12 in the hardest year it's ever been in the conference. You won a ton. You won 25 plus games again. Jalen Wilson's a consensus All-American, all-time great. And that's who I feel the most for is God, he had such a good career and a lot of ups and downs, but man, just an incredible season. And he'll always be remembered. He's going to get his name in the rafters. And, I feel for him. Next year and this offseason are going to be weird for KU because there are a lot of guys leaving. I personally believe a ton of guys are transferring. I think Rice is gone. I think the guys who've been injured all year are gone. I would not be surprised if you told me Pettiford and Yesufu and Clements all consider the portal. It's going to be a very different looking team next year. So if you're into like the portal and the off the court stuff, this is a great year for you. We're talking NFL and much more next hour on 580 Sports Talk. now, 4 o'clock hour of 580 Sports Talk. Just getting started on 580 WIBW and FM 104.9 on this Monday, March 20th. I'm Brendan Dworzinski. He is Dan Lucero. Thank you so much for joining us on the show today. If you missed any of the first hour, head to our website. That's 580WIBW.com. Hover over the podcast tab. Then click on 580 Sports Talk, where you'll find the hour-by-hour breakdown of the show, including all of our talk about weekend number 1 of the NCAA tournament. We'll talk plenty more tournament basketball coming up later on in this hour. Plus, we've got our first What Is Wrong With You of the week coming up in a little bit. But right now, it is time to talk all things National Football League with Matt Verderame, NFL staff writer for Sports Illustrated. You can find him on Twitter at Matt Verderame, and he joins us usually bottom of the 3 o'clock hour on Mondays, but moved the time around a little bit to 4 o'clock today. Matt, first question I've got for you. Generally speaking, all of free agency so far, what is the most surprising move that you have noticed through the first week of NFL free agency?
That's a really good question. I would say, of all the moves, I think, kind of being sarcastic, but I kind of mean it too, like the Lions, I think, are the biggest winners of free agency, which usually you don't put the Lions and winning in the same sentence. But Brad Holmes has done a really good job since he took over as GM. And I have a lot of faith in Holmes there, along with, of course, Dan Campbell and John Dorsey's in that front office. And their defense was a mess last year. They ranked 32nd in the NFL in yards per play against. They went out, they got Chauncey Gardner-Johnson on a 1-year, $8 million deal, which, by the way, you could also put in the conversation as the most surprising thing. I think a lot of people thought he was going to get a really big deal. Cam Sutton, 3 years, $33 million, coming over as a corner from the Steelers who can play inside or out. And then they also get Emmanuel Mosley from the Niners, who tore his ACL at mid-season. Unfortunate for him. He's a good player when he's healthy. They remade that secondary in a week with some really talented guys. So I think Detroit being able to really revamp the defensive secondary was something that was a big surprise for me, just from the standpoint of it is great if you can get one guy to start fixing a unit in a week. They got 3 of them. So hats off to Brad Holmes and his staff.
Something of a surprise involving the Kansas City Chiefs took place near the end of last week when Juju Smith-Schuster announced that he is moving on to New England. Got a 3-year deal for actually less guaranteed money than Jacoby Myers got. That, in and of itself, I thought was somewhat shocking. How surprised are you, though, Matt, that he ended up going elsewhere and not returning to the Chiefs?
Not terribly. When I was in Indianapolis, it's one of those things you hear stuff. You don't want to full on report it because it's like it's secondhand. You try to pin it down. It's hard to pin down. But there was a lot of talk in Indy that he had a good 4, 5, 6 suitors, and that he was going to come in somewhere around $13 million a year. Now, once Jacoby Myers went for 11, I said, okay, maybe that's going to be his market. It turned out that's exactly what his market and Alan Lazard's market was. I knew that the Chiefs, or at least my understanding was that the Chiefs were interested when I was at the Combine, that they wanted to bring him back. But as we've seen with Brett Veach, whether it's Juju, whether it's Tyreek Hill last year, Travis Ward last year, who they also tried to bring back last year and they lost out to the Niners, whether it's Orlando Brown, the Chiefs have a number with Brett Veach. And if you go over that number, they will wish you well. They'll put out a nice little graphic that says thank you, and that's it. They will move on. I think there's very, very few guys they'll truly go over a number for. I think they would obviously do it for Mahomes. They do it for Kelsey. I think they would do it for Chris Jones. That might be the entire list.
Are there any wide receivers out there right now who you think the Chiefs would or maybe should have a lot of interest in? I mean, Juju made a lot of sense, but there's also the report from James Palmer of NFL Network last week that the Chiefs might view Kadarius Toney as a number 1, which I think the upside could be there, but I don't know if we have proof that he can fill in that role. Obviously, their number 1 target in all reality is Travis Kelsey. But are there any names out there right now who stand out to you as, you know what, maybe this would make sense on a short-term deal for the Chiefs?
Yeah, there's a few. And by the way, James Palmer's report does a great job over at NFL Network. I would say that, I guess the term would be back it up. Like that's accurate. I mean, the Chiefs do feel that way about Toney. Now, the question with Toney is going to be, can he stay healthy? Because I think everybody believes the talent's there. He was a first-round pick a couple of years ago with the Giants for a reason, and he showed a lot of that talent in spurts in Kansas City, but he had a hamstring injury in KC, he had a hamstring injury with the Giants. He was hurt part of his rookie year. That's the concern. As for the guys who they could sign, well, I'll give you one name that everybody's familiar with, Mecole Hardman, who's still a free agent. Do the Chiefs bring him back? Maybe at some point here, it makes sense for both sides. DJ Chark is a guy who's still out there. He's a good player. I don't think you'll look at him as a number one option as a receiver, but could he be a 2 or even a 2A or 2B with MVS? Sure. Odell Beckham's the guy that the Chiefs have been linked to now for a couple of years, and I can tell you that in the past, at least, the Chiefs have had real interest in him and have wanted him. I think it matters in terms of, look, how much does he want? And there have been conflicting reports on that. But I think the Chiefs are certainly interested there. And then the guy I think, frankly, that makes the most sense for him is DeAndre Hopkins. Now, they have to trade for him. But if you're the Chiefs, like, I'd be willing to give up a mid-third round value on him. You know, maybe I'd say, hey, look, we'll give you if I'm the Chiefs, here's our second, and we'll take DeAndre Hopkins and your fourth. Something like that. But to me, if you can bring in DeAndre Hopkins, he is an elite talent. Still is, by the way. Played 10 games last year because he was suspended for 6 at the beginning. He posted over 700 yards. Go look at who the Cardinals quarterbacks were last year throwing him the ball. So I think for Kansas City, I think Hopkins would be an unbelievable addition to the outside.
Our guest is Matt Verderame, covers the National Football League for Sports Illustrated, and he joins us Mondays here on 580 Sports Talk to talk about the latest Chiefs and NFL developments. You can find him on Twitter at Matt Verderame. Matt, you mentioned the name Orlando Brown. The Chiefs, obviously, Orlando Brown and the Chiefs did not see eye to eye on a number, so Orlando Brown goes ahead and joins the team that has been the most direct threat to the Chiefs' AFC supremacy over the last 2 years. He'll be the left tackle in Cincinnati on a deal that pays him a lot of guaranteed money up front, but not quite the average annual value that he was reportedly looking for or that the Chiefs reportedly offered him before last season. First question I have for you about Orlando Brown, how much of an upgrade is he for Cincinnati over Jonah Williams, who was their starter last year?
A sizable one. Look, Jonah Williams is a passable left tackle. He's had some injuries. Last year finally stayed healthy, played the whole season over there. I think it's fair to say that Jonah Williams is a guy I think is going to have a pretty long career in the NFL. Is that at left tackle? Is that at right tackle? That's debatable. But I think he's a guy who, he wants to trade now out of Cincinnati. If he gets it, I think there will be teams that'd be excited to make him an addition, a former first-round pick out of Alabama. The question's going to be if he gets moved, if he ends up getting out of Cincinnati, then how much of an upgrade overall is it? Because, okay, Brown comes in as the left tackle. That's fine. He's a better player. But Lyle Collins, who played right tackle for them last year, he had a serious injury at the end of the regular season with his knee. I don't know that he's even back with the Bengals next year. I mean, they may move on. They could save a lot of money. If they don't move on, they keep Collins. He may not be back to the end of next season or at least maybe midway through the year at best. So that's a real problem for the Bengals. I think Brown is better than Williams, but I wonder if Williams gets dealt, how much does that kind of mitigate the upgrade?
Would the Chiefs, you think, have been able to come to an agreement with Orlando Brown if he'd have been willing to accept that kind of money from the Chiefs? Or what do you think the disconnect there was ultimately?
I mean, look, this isn't any insider info in this case, but I think if Orlando Brown could go back in time, I think he would have signed a year ago at Kansas City. I mean, I know for a fact from doing the reporting at the time, they offered him 5 and a little over 90. And the signing bonus was, I think, $1 million less than what the Bengals just gave him. So that contract was significantly. Now, the 6th year of that contract offer from the Chiefs had a ridiculous amount of funny money. It was like 40-some-odd million, and none of it you never would have seen any of it. But if you take that out of it, they basically offered him $18 million a year with a very, very similar signing bonus what the Bengals gave him. I mean, there's no question. I think if Brown had been willing to take $4.64, the Chiefs would still have him as the left tackle. Now, the reality of it is he was looking for a larger deal. That's been widely reported dating back to last year when he was on the tag in Kansas City. And that didn't materialize. I think this is a case, and you see it all the time, where his representation has an idea of what his market values can be. And when that doesn't come in the first 24 to 48 hours of free agency, all the money that is available for all these teams under the cap starts to quickly go away. And now those offers are typically the best early. Then they start to get lower and lower. But Brown ended up still getting a life-changing amount of money. He's going to be able to sleep at night. But they left a lot of money on the table by not signing the deal that was offered to them a year ago.
Chiefs have made a couple of signings on defense as well. Former Buccaneers safety Mike Edwards putting pen to paper today. Also Charles Omenihu, former defensive lineman from the 49ers. What should the Chiefs be most excited about those two players bringing to the table?
Yeah, well, Omenihu really, he's a nice signing on the field. Now, he's dealing with a little bit of legal trouble off the field dating back to an arrest back in January. But he is a guy who you can play him at end, you can move him inside, and he gives you some versatility, which of course the Chiefs love. They have that in Mike Dana, they have that in Chris Jones when he occasionally kicks outside. I would describe Omenihu to people who haven't seen him as Mike Dana, but a better player, a more disruptive pass rusher. And Dana had a good year last year, but Omenihu was top 15, I believe it was, in pressures. And he only played about half the snaps for the 49ers because they're so deep on the D-line. So he's a really nice player. I liked him coming out of Texas a couple of years ago when he came out. I think he's going to fit in nicely with the Chiefs do. And then you talk about Edwards. Edwards started last year for the Bucs, played well over 90% of their snaps on defense. With the Chiefs, obviously, he's going to be in part of a rotation there with Cook. But he's a nice player. He's a guy who I think gives them a little bit, again, versatility on the back end. And he's more of that, I think, for the Chiefs, a guy who you could play in a little bit of a rangy role on the back end. He's got good hands. So I think that's a really nice signing at 1 year and $5 million. And the other defensive sign they had, which I thought was a little surprising, but a really good signing, was Drew Tranquil. 1 year, I'm told $3 million with up to $5 million in total in incentives. Drew Tranquil last year had 5 sacks and 146 tackles, and he's an excellent coverage linebacker. I don't know why the Chargers paid Eric Hendricks and not Drew Tranquil, but that's a great signing for Kansas City. To put him in a room with Willie Gay and Nick Bolton, I think really solidifies that second level as one of the best in the league.
Just a few more questions for Matt Verderame, NFL writer for Sports Illustrated, whom you can find on Twitter at Matt Verderame. He joins us every Monday here on 580 Sports Talk to talk all things National Football League. With all of these moves accounted for and many of the big names, although not all of them signed to this point, Matt, who do you think is the best remaining free agent, or one or two of the best remaining free agents?
There's a few. Frank Clark's out there. I think he's still interesting. Yannick Ngakwe is still out there. I think he'll end up being an impact player when he finds a new home. We already talked about Beckham. He's one of the best guys out there. If Gardner Johnson was still out there, I would have said him, but he obviously signed last night in Detroit. There's still some guys that I think can impact teams, but I think now we're to the point where probably going to be more team-friendly deals, probably a lot of one-year contracts. I don't think you're going to be seeing a lot of multi-year deals. But this is the time right now where if you have a good front office, you can find value. You can now find a guy where you go, okay, maybe he's a little older, maybe the guy's a little bit of an injury risk. There's usually a reason that guys are available at this point, but you can find a player or two who are really important. We've obviously talked a lot about Kansas City. I think right now the biggest sign they need to make is Jerick McKinnon. McKinnon as a blocker is so valuable to the Chiefs. I think he's a guy you really want to bring back. And if you're a team, that's looking for a back, he's the kind of guy that maybe you don't get excited about if you see it come across Twitter. But when you watch him play, you go, oh, okay, he actually brings a lot to the room, a lot to the field. But there are still a decent amount of guys out there who I think can make a difference. But now it's probably, like I said, you're going to be talking mostly 1-year deal.
Couple quarterback questions, Matt, to get you out of here. First one from a player who's already in the NFL. We have movement on the Aaron Rodgers situation. We know he is not going to play for the Packers anymore. It is Jordan Love's show there. We'll talk more about Love later this offseason. But Aaron Rodgers says he's planning to play for the Jets next year. It is quite obvious those two teams are at some point going to work out a deal. Right now, the story is that they just need to figure out what the compensation is. So if you are in those negotiations, what do you think would be fair compensation for the Jets to give up for Aaron Rodgers at this point?
Well, about a week and a half ago, I believe it was, I talked to 3 people who were or are in front offices who are in major positions of power, team president, GM, so on and so forth. And I asked them, if you were Joe Douglas, what would you offer? And none of them said a first-round pick. It was a lot of day 2 stuff and conditionals in 2024. And some of it, of course, depended upon how much the Packers will eat of this $58.3 million option that he's got to be given before September 1st. And so, look, I think in the end, if you're Joe Douglas, that interview that Rodgers did on McAfee is helping nobody in the Jets organization, because now the Packers can sit there and say, well, all the pressure in the world's on you. I mean, you've got to go get him because you haven't had a quarterback that's any good since Namath. So what are you going to give up? The problem for the Packers on the flip side of that is the Jets can sit there and go, hey, listen, we at some point will pivot. And Lamar Jackson's out there if we want to make an offer. And you guys are going to get stuck eating $60 million. So I think the end result of this is a compromise. I think the Jets will give up a second-round pick and then next year a conditional pick that goes up dependent either on how far the Jets advance or how much the Packers are willing to eat financially. But I think it's going to end up being a couple of day 2 picks.
I would take that. I'd be happy with that at this point. Final thing for you, Matt. As we stand 5.5 weeks from the first round of the NFL draft, which quarterback do you think the Carolina Panthers are taking first overall?
CJ Stroud. That would be my. Listen, I have a saying that I firmly believe. Vegas knows. Vegas always knows. The second the Panthers moved up to number 1, so did CJ Stroud in their odds by a significant margin. He's a bigger guy. I know Frank Reich said don't look into that because of his past. I don't believe that. I think that matters. I think that Stroud, the size, the total package, I think makes a lot of sense for Carolina. But I do think it's going to be he and Young 1, 2 in some order. I don't think any firm decision has been made yet by the Panthers.
Very interesting. We'll obviously be keeping tabs on that as well as what goes on with the Chiefs and the rest of the NFL around free agency during our weekly conversation with Matt Verderame, Sports Illustrated. All of his work at SI, and you can also find him on Twitter at Matt Verderame. Matt, we appreciate the time as always. We will talk to you next Monday.
Sounds good. Take care, guys.
That is Matt Verderame from Sports Illustrated. By the way, as we were finishing up our conversation with Matt, we've got some more free agent news from the NFL. The Houston Texans are signing the best tight end on the market, Dalton Schultz, 1 year, $9 million.
Really surprised. Only 1 year deal for Schultz, especially with Hurst getting 3 years.
I believe it was 3, yeah.
You know, you are at the point now where if you're still on the board, it probably is a 1 year deal coming your way. And if that's the case, there are definitely some guys like the Chiefs should be on the horn with Yannick Ngakwe's agent. See if he'll do a 1 year prove a deal.
100%. I think Schultz is a nice player. I don't think he's great, but he's a nice player.
Yeah, not a superstar, but like in an offseason where Hayden Hurst got 3 years, I think he's a better player than Hayden Hurst. I think he's a better pass catcher than Hayden Hurst.
I would agree with that. Yeah, I would agree. If you flip those two deals, I'd say, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I got to think Houston's had a nice offseason.
Yeah, they're a real franchise now.
Yeah.
Again, yeah. They feel like a real team.
This comment is not meant to insult anyone's religious beliefs or faith or any of that, because I know if someone said something to me that insulted mine, I'd be very upset about it. So this is not meant to insult anyone, but maybe this is a sign that you shouldn't have a pastor also run your football operations. Like Jack Easterby had 0 qualifications to run a football team. Maybe just a sign that like the personal chaplain for your owner shouldn't run the team.
Yes.
Just a thought. I think the two teams that are picking 1 and 2 have had really good off seasons. I think Carolina's done a good job. Now you had to give up DJ Moore to go get that first pick, but if you find a franchise quarterback, that's more important than a number one wide receiver.
Yeah. Then
in Houston, they've done well too.
Yeah, but then the Panthers gave Adam Thielen 3 years, and that's really weird to me.
I imagine it's probably like one of those 2 with an option kind of deals.
Yeah, is it a real 3 years? Maybe not, but
how much does he have left?
That's the question, especially in a new system. Rookie quarterback, probably.
Yeah. I mean, he had been with the same guy for so long. And say whatever you want about Kirk Cousins, but Adam Thielen had some pretty good years catching passes from Kirk Cousins.
Yeah.
So, no, that's fascinating. I really do wonder where the Chiefs are going receiver-wise. I did see a mock draft, by the way, though, that, and I know this name has come up, you and I just talking before. We have a whole mock draft roundup, by the way, at our website right now, 580wibw.com. It is mock draft Monday, after all. I believe it was Pro Football Focus had Dalton Kincaid, the tight end from Utah, going to the Chiefs. I would trade up to get Dalton Kincaid.
I think I would too.
Like, forget, you don't need more wide receivers. You're done. You're MVS and Kadarius Toney, boom. And Sky Moore. That's the only receivers you need. If you're running tight ends with Travis Kelce and Dalton Kincaid, oh my God. That would be the ideal scenario, I think, for the Kansas City Chiefs. And the Texans just signed Devin Singletary, too.
Oh, wow.
As their number 2 running back behind Dameon Pierce. A real good offseason in Houston. More than my favorite team has done for sure. We've got to get to a break here on 580 Sports Talk. Later on this hour, we'll talk some more NCAA tournament. Right now, though, after this timeout, we've got our What Is Wrong With You right here on 580 Sports Talk. We're back on 580 Sports Talk. During the break, I just said something to Dan that probably needed more elaboration that I don't think I should probably repeat.
It absolutely did.
But then I heard the ID and we had to come back on, and I feel kind of bad for leaving it hanging.
Well, you are. Yeah, I'm waiting with bated breath for the next commercial break for you to elaborate.
Yeah, I don't think it is appropriate to repeat on the airwaves. My apologies. We've got our What Is Wrong. That can be a What Is Wrong With You to start off the week. This is our final full of What Is Wrong With You. Coming up next Thursday and Friday, we will have our semifinals and finals for the month of March. Crazy that we're zipping through that this quickly. Dan, I will have you go first today. I actually saw your story while I was finding mine for today, but this woman made me so aggrieved and so angry I could not pick it. Oh my God, this woman drives me nuts.
We're going to Schuylkill County in Pennsylvania, and you better believe I looked up how to pronounce Schuylkill. I'm still not sure I'm doing it right, but Schuylkill County woman facing charges for stealing money that she collected through a fundraiser. Charges have been filed against 54-year-old Camille Yoder of Forestville for allegedly stealing hundreds of dollars from a cancer patient she held a fundraiser for.
Oh my God.
So, Minersville Police Patrolman Jeffrey Bowers says in early February of this year, he learned that Yoder hosted a pulled pork dinner fundraiser at the Rod Gun Club. Yoder held the event that sold platters that included a pulled pork sandwich, coleslaw, a roll, and a baked potato for $15. The pork for the sandwiches was donated by a chef. The containers, rolls, and potatoes were donated by the victim's sister. To promote the event, Yoder created a Facebook event that stated all proceeds to benefit the family, with the actual event being held at the club on Gallo Row in Minersville, where Yoder and her husband are members. The family of the cancer patient told police they did not request Yoder to conduct the fundraiser, that she took it upon herself to do so. During the course of the fundraiser, the family of the victim said Yoder collected numerous donations in excess of $15 because the donors believed that the money was going directly to the victim. They told investigators they witnessed $180 in cash donations collected by Yoder. The total amount collected was $1,380 that included 1,200 platters, 80 at $15 apiece, and the $180 in donations. After the fundraiser, Yoder continued to hold the funds. Representatives of the victim attempted to contact Yoder numerous times, inquiring about the proceeds, to which Yoder provided several excuses, including waiting on checks from classmates from outside the area. Eventually, Yoder agreed to meet with the cancer patient's sister, where she only provided $600, leaving a balance of $780. Yoder told the family that she still had expenses to pay, including expenses for coleslaw. The chef told police it cost approximately $50 to $100 to make the coleslaw. It's rabbit food with mayonnaise. That's what coleslaw is.
And some vinegar.
Coleslaw is bad. That's my opinion on coleslaw. It's unnecessary. Coleslaw is bad. Anyhow,
and obviously extremely pricey.
Yeah. Bowers and is the police officer. Butler is the detective. They learned that Yoder's membership with the gun club had already been in question. The club told investigators she did not have permission to hold the fundraiser. And oh yeah, by the way, she was on probation from the club after a large sum of cash went missing under suspicious circumstances. On Wednesday, Yoder was charged with theft by failure to make required disposition of funds, theft by deception, and receiving stolen property. Bowers says the family of the victim is seeking restitution for the $780.
What an awful human being. Just a genuinely terrible person. Oh, yeah, this money was supposed to go to this fundraiser, but I just pocketed it instead. You suck. You suck so much.
Yeah, I still have to pay for the coleslaw. Yo, you said, you put it in writing on the internet for everyone to read. All proceeds will go to the family, not some of the proceeds, not a percentage of the proceeds, all of the proceeds. So it's very reasonable that the victim's family would want all of the damn proceeds. Don't give me no mess about it costs $700 for some coleslaw.
This sucks. I hate this person. This falls into the worst people we've had on the program list, I think.
Yes, 100% a grifter. Yes.
Oh, my God, I hate that. My story is going to take us to Cocoa, Florida, where a woman was arrested Thursday night at a McDonald's, accused of brandishing a gun in the drive-thru and pointing it at an employee due to an argument over a non-existent menu item. An affidavit. Wait, do so many people pull their guns at McDonald's or Wendy's or Taco Bell?
Why do they take their gun to those places?
I don't know.
Like, I am off to McDonald's. I have my wallet to pay for my food. I'm bringing my appetite. And oh, yeah, I got to have the heat on me just in case they don't serve me this item that I may or may not have made up in my head.
An affidavit describes what responding officers were told by witnesses after arriving to find Quavi Young, a 26-year-old, behind the wheel with a gun in her passenger seat. The weapon was identified as an M&P Shield 9mm with a drum magazine capable of holding up to 50 rounds. That is all Greek to me. I'm really not sure what any of that means except the very last part. I know that's a lot.
I think it means she was about to spray up the place.
Yeah, not great. So News 6 Florida called the McDonald's on Saturday to ask what the fuss was about. That's the actual writing here in this story. We were informed that Young allegedly demanded a, quote, cheeseburger bundle, a sort of combo similar to what can be done for McDoubles or McChickens, and refused an employee's offer to sell her a cheeseburger and an a la carte order of small fries instead. If you look on the menu, this woman could have read it. There's nothing called a cheeseburger bundle.
No, it's 2 cheeseburgers with fries and a drink. She went up there all aggressive. I want a liter cola.
So this occurred during the woman's second appearance in the drive-thru lane that day, according to the employee. The employee described how things were, quote, a little bit busy in the drive-thru lane during the first encounter. The second time, the victim told police that Young pulled to the drive-thru window, at the first drive-thru window, after being told she couldn't be served a meal that was not on the menu.
She said, I don't want a large farva. I want a liter cola.
Once there, the victim asked Young what her problem was, to which Young brandished the pistol. Okay, probably not the thing to say to an aggrieved customer, for what it's worth. According to the affidavit, the victim then asked Young why she was so mad over a simple issue. It's an instigator behind the window. Young pointed the gun at the victim, verbally threatening them as well, before proceeding to the next window. When police arrived, officers learned that Young also did not have a valid driver's license. Young faces charges of open carry of a weapon, knowingly driving with a suspended license for your first offense, and aggravated assault with a deadly weapon without intent to kill, the last of which is a felony. She was booked on Friday morning, given $7,500 bond, and was bonded out that same morning.
See, here's how this goes in, like, polite society. Hi, I would like your cheeseburger bundle. Yeah, we don't have that. That's not a thing on our menu. And we do have this 2 cheeseburger value meal, if that is what you are referring to. Okay, yeah, I guess that's fine. Here's money. There's your food. Go on your merry way. She was spoiling for a fight. We're told, by the way, on the text line from the 913 that the gun in question, really small handgun, really big drum.
All right. That is good to know. Why? Just what? Like, the other way this goes in polite society is Ms. Young says, oh, my bad, give me a number 8. Yeah. Boom, you're done.
Look, I love the McDonald's cheeseburger bundle, or as it's actually known, the 2 cheeseburgers with fries and a Coke on their value menu. I get it like after high school basketball or college basketball games all the time. Mm-hmm. One of my absolute favorite things to order, because sometimes nothing tastes better than a simple McDonald's cheeseburger, no pickle. I like to order that. Of course, I like to order that very much, but like, it's very funny that she got that mad over trying to order something that is not on the menu.
It just could not possibly be more overkill.
It's like if she rolled up and I'm thinking about the old the Mitch Hedberg bit about being a McDonald's owner and not participating in anything. You always hear in the McDonald's commercials, at participating locations only. I want to be a McDonald's owner and not participate in anything. You got burgers? Nope.
We got spaghetti
and blankets. We are not affiliated with that clown.
Oh my God. My go-to, by the way, 2 cheeseburgers, 2 McDouble, or 2 cheeseburgers, 2 McChickens.
Okay.
The chicken is way cheaper in a McChicken than if you get the nuggets. Way cheaper.
This is true.
For a nearly similar amount of chicken.
Man, now I'm hungry.
Yeah, I'm starving. Who you got? See, the McDonald's story is so much funnier because it's so stupidly over the top. This woman could not have possibly, like, there's so many other ways she could have approached this. The other woman is far more
stole money
evil.
from a cancer patient and claimed it was because coleslaw was expensive.
Man, I think that has to win, but I hate this one.
Yeah.
We need a good story the next couple of days.
I hope we can beat her, but she's not losing today.
No. Oh, my God. What a terrible person. That is our winner in today's What Is Wrong With You. We had a nomination from someone, the fake fundraiser. That was from Matt in the YouTube comments. We've got to take a quick break. We'll come back, talk some more NCAA tournament here on 580 Sports Talk. about this from Fran Fraschilla, who just put this on Twitter? Brendan and Dan here with you, by the way, on 580 Sports Talk. Tweeted this out just 20 minutes ago. Says, been saving this stat about Marquise Noel, a.k.a. the little guy, but never used it on air for K-State games this year. He is now, over the course of the season, 71 of 76 at the free throw line in the final 5 minutes of game. That is 93.4% in the final 5 minutes at the stripe. You want to talk about clutch? That is clutch.
And he's 89%, I think, or he was going into yesterday's. I haven't seen the updated stats. He's 89% on the year. Just doesn't miss those. He missed one yesterday, so it probably went down from 89, although he did shoot more than 10. He only missed
went 10 of 11.
So, yeah, it probably went up. Yeah, that is like Mariano Rivera in the ninth inning levels of closing games.
88.7% for the year at the free throw line for Noel.
It's such a weapon to have no fear in that spot. Just get it to this guy. And the creative ways that Kansas State did get it to him, I loved it. I called it out right away as it was happening the first time. I was sitting next to my wife on the couch. I said, Abby, they're going to run a football play here. And they did.
Yeah.
They ran like a quick screen to Marquise Noel.
It was awesome.
Nothing K-State loves more than throwing quick screens to 5'8" or less guys. Name a more iconic thing than that.
There might not be one. Game of the weekend.
Boy, hard to say it wasn't K-State, Kentucky, or KU, Arkansas. I mean, a little bit of bias there. It's both of the in-state teams, but both of those games were played at a very high level. Outside, though, of those teams, I thought TCU Gonzaga was the best game, and I thought it would be the best game because it's a great example of styles make fights. Like TCU had exactly what they needed to make it hard for Gonzaga. Veteran, aggressive guards against Gonzaga's less experienced guards. And Gonzaga had exactly what they needed to make it hard for TCU, which was center who was good. And that is underselling Drew Timme, who was awesome last night. Like, Drew Timme gets the jokes. He's been around forever. He's got the mustache. He swears on live television. He plays for Gonzaga. They've never really won. They haven't won the national championship with him there. He's been around so long that I think we forget just what an unbelievable college player he is. Like, I think you start to sell a guy like that short because they've been around and their excellence has been so evident for so long. But he was out there, like, he's out there playing like Nikola Jokic, and I can't pay a higher compliment to a center than that. He even made a three. He doesn't make a lot of those.
Just his third of the year, I believe, is what they said on the broadcast. That was a awesome performance from him. And if it hadn't been for the way the game ended and making me think about never watching sports ever again, that easily would have been the pick for me for a game of the tournament. I thought Xavier Kennesaw State in the first round was really good. Kennesaw State just ran out of gas at the very end. Barbara in the YouTube comments, Sports on 580 WIBW is our YouTube channel. She nominates FDU versus FAU.
That was a really fun game.
It was a fun game. There was a lot of just back and forth the entire time. Where do you stand on the dunk or the attempted dunk at the end of the game?
I stand on it where Bill Self stands on it.
Can we say that word?
No.
I don't know if we can.
I'm not going to chance it.
Yeah.
We're not
smart.
on True TV, so I'm not going to chance it.
So if you didn't see the way that game played out, it was a really fun game, fairly low scoring, but it was a really fun game back and forth. Amazing. And a lot of people put this on social media. Florida Atlantic, generally speaking, would have been a darling of this tournament because they've only been to the tournament, I think, twice now. They are pretty much a nobody, but they win their conference. They win 31 games for the year. Awesome story. They just happen to play only the second 16 seed to ever make it to the second round. So they become the villain, and everyone's cheering against them on site for the entire game. That was in Columbus, I believe. At the end of the game, it's been decided FAU starts to pull away, and as time expires, a player, Elijah, what was his last name?
I don't remember.
Oh my God. First name is Elijah for Florida Atlantic. Had a great game. Tries a 360 dunk at the end and clanks it.
He missed it, which I guess if you're going to do it, you better make it.
That's what I thought. Like, if you want to do that, so be it. Fine, whatever. You're celebrating. It's the furthest you've ever gone. Whatever. But you got to make it. Because if you miss the D move dunk, oh, man, you look like a clown. And you will always look like a clown.
Yeah. I don't love it. Like, it's nothing I would, like, rend any garments over. It's not necessary. It does feel like you're piling on a little bit, but at the same time, sometimes, I believe it was the philosopher Nevadius Future Wilburn who once said, "You do what you want when you're popping, and when you're about to go to the Sweet 16, you can do what you want." And I think that the reaction, if Tobin Anderson, the FDU head coach, had just like shrugged it off, I don't think anybody would have been all that concerned about it. But he was pretty clearly heated about it.
Yeah.
And then also, it's like, I think it would have played different if FDU had done it, because FAU was favored by 15.5 points in that game. And so it's kind of thing, like, if you're the underdog, I get it. I get that feeling. But at the same time, I get being excited you're about to go to Sweet 16 too. I'm not going to pile on the kid too much. I'm sure his coach said, hey, maybe make a better choice next time. And that's all it needs to be.
Then again, their head coach, Dusty May, is a disciple of Bob Knight. So maybe he wouldn't say that. He might say, hey, go do it again. Make it next time.
Well, if he's a disciple of Bob Knight, he says a lot of things.
Yeah. I told my wife as we were watching
I didn't realize that about Dusty May. We got to learn about him in the next 4 days or so.
I told my wife, I said, that kid's post game is going to be the most miserable hour of his life, because he is just going to get chewed out like crazy. Speaking of best games, what teams have impressed you the most? Either conceptually, like the older teams, or the teams that actually can shoot the three, because apparently nobody can in this tournament, which is bizarre. What teams have impressed you the most? And obviously you get to the final 16, you're, of a 64-ish team field, you're one of the final quarter of teams left. But which teams have impressed you the most up to this point?
I'm going to put my hand up here and admit that I have a bit of a blind spot when it comes to following college basketball. The blind spot is I don't watch enough of the Big East. And the reason I don't watch enough of Big East, and this is kind of their fault and it's kind of not, they're not on ESPN. All their games are on FS1.
Yeah.
And like, if I'm looking for a game to watch, because I'm an American sports fan and I've been alive in the last 40 years, my default is to check ESPN. And I will generally land on a Big 10. Well, not anymore, but I land on a Big 10 or a Big 12 or an ACC game. I just don't land on the Big East like that. I don't watch, like, regular season Creighton taking on Xavier or UConn playing Seton Hall. Like, generally speaking, those are not games that I check for in a way that clearly I should, because there are 3 Big East teams in the Sweet 16, which is most of any conference. I think the only other conferences with 2 are the SEC and the Big 12. The top of the Big East, and our CJ Moore, friend of the program, said, I think it was before conference tournament week, he said, look, the top of the Big East is awesome.
Yeah.
And it is. Like, UConn, they're deep. I don't love their guards, but they're deep and their bigs can move. And their bigs are huge.
Sonogo is a monster.
Yes, Sonogo is built like a skyscraper, and he's not even the tallest one. Donovan Klingen's the tallest one. But they're deep and they're tough. And Xavier, we talked about Xavier going into the tournament, is they lost a guy who's averaging 15 points a game. They might be better without him. They certainly are in the defensive end.
Ewing theory?
Maybe. But, and they've got Sule Boom, who's a star.
Yeah.
And again, like, Sean Miller doesn't have a great tournament resume, but the guy's won a lot of basketball games. And the other team, Creighton, who went into the year with Final Four buzz and then completely tripped over their own 2 feet out of the gate. But the metrics have loved them all year long.
Yeah.
They have always been a team, like right now, they are 12th in the Ken Pom. And that's after, tournament results. So they've had a chance to move ahead of some teams. Some teams have tried to drop behind them, but still, they're a top 12 team in Ken Pom. They're a 6th seed. So the Big East, for me, like, Creighton can score. They got weapons all over. UConn, their size is a little more functional than maybe I realized. Even if I don't love their guards, I think they're going to be I think they're going to have their hands full with Arkansas and Arkansas's guards. I think it's going to be a tough matchup for them. But Xavier getting better without a 15-point-a-game guy, like, that's surprising to me. So, yeah, I got to shout out the Big East. It's a much better conference than I realized it was. And that's, again, my own blind spot there.
I saw some discussion right before the bracket was announced. So the week lead, so champ week, essentially, about how a lot of folks thought the Big 12 was overrated because it essentially became a self-fulfilling prophecy. Yeah, you have all these quad 1 wins because everybody in the conference is putting quad 1. And so you play each other. And, like, I don't think the conference was overrated, but I do understand why that was the case. But I do think the Big East was underrated. And again, fair or not, it's because they've got a less accessible TV deal. And like I'm a YouTube TV subscriber. You don't have a channel number. You just scroll through the menu until you find the channel you want.
You got to go a ways to get to FS1. You got to get through all the ESPN stuff to get to FS1.
Yeah, ESPN, ESPN2, ESPN News,
SEC, ACC.
They all pop up before the Fox Sports channels do. So if I'm just trying to find a random game to watch and, hey, Oklahoma State versus TCU is on tonight on ESPN2, I'm going to see that before I come across Villanova Xavier. Like it's not fair, but that is the way it is. But that's a darn good league with some really – like Marquette was really good this year.
Yeah.
They still got knocked out.
They were the regular season champs,
round.
and they got knocked out. I think the three best teams in the league in the country, the three best leagues in the country, have half the Sweet 16. That feels right. SEC, Big 12, Big East.
I would agree with that. I would agree with that wholeheartedly. And the league that is constantly...
I guess it's 7 of the 16, but it's almost half.
Close enough. The league, Houston's going to be in the Big 12, so count that.
Yes, they count. They are a Big 12 team now.
And the Big 10, which constantly has awful officiating that does not prepare teams for conference play, that constantly beats up on itself and plays outdated basketball. I was watching Candace Parker on the March Madness wrap-up show last night, and I thought she had a great argument until she said everyone has said the Big 10's the best league all year, when she clearly confused Big 10 and Big 12.
Yeah, I heard that too.
Her argument was solid. Like they play an outdated form of basketball.
Mm-hmm.
They play a lot of, go through the big man kind of basketball. Mm-hmm. Illinois the last couple of years with Kofi Coburn, Purdue this year with Zach Edey.
Man,
a lot of these teams.
Speaking of like a broader point,
SEC competition is not good overall, but that's a really good player. I think Gonzaga's got a real Final Four chance. I really do. We've got to get to a break. We've got our headlines, some more NFL talk, and more in the 5 o'clock hour of 580 Sports Talk. Hey now, 1 hour to go on 580 Sports Talk. I'm Brendan Dworzinski. He is Dan Lucero. Thank you so much for joining us for the entirety of this edition of 580 Sports Talk and for this final hour of the program as well. Whether you're listening on the Sports Voice of Kansas, following along on 580WIBW.com, or if you are watching on YouTube, Sports on 580 WIBW is the name of our channel. Go subscribe if you have not yet. You can go comment as well. The comment section wide open throughout the show. We're also taking your thoughts on the text line. 785-272-9429 is the text line number. If you want to chime in about anything we are talking about on the show today. Coming up in this final hour of the show, we've got our 580 Sports Talk headlines in just a moment. We will also talk a little NFL free agency and what the Chiefs should think about doing at wide receiver. Plus, we've got a college basketball trivia question for Dan in the wake of one team, well, getting rid of its basketball program for good. A Division I team. They're not dropping to D2. They're not dropping to D3. They're just going kaput. They're done. They're closing their doors in sports. So I got a trivia question about that for Dan and for you later on in this 5 o'clock hour of the show. Don't forget that if you've missed any of the show, head to our website. Again, that's 580WIBW.com. Hover your cursor over the podcast tab and then click on 580 Sports Talk, and that's where you'll find the hour-by-hour breakdown of the show today. Without further ado, Dan, let's get to our 580 Sports Talk headlines on this Monday, March 20th. And we'll start in the college basketball world because, oh boy, there is a lot of coaching news to get to today. A ton of names on the move. We'll just list them all off and we'll react to each one as we get to them. First one, let's go to St. John's first. A lot of this specifically from the Big East. Let's go to St. John's. 70-year-old Rick Pitino has signed a 6-year deal to become the new head coach at St. John's, leaving Iona after just a couple of seasons. Not a surprise. This has been in the works for, well, if not weeks, but at least a few days at this point. This is a great move for St. John's. They want to get back to prominence. It has been a while since St. John's has been a real player in the Big East. Going and getting the biggest fish out there, Rick Pitino, and bringing him to your small pond feels like a smart decision. Obviously, there is baggage that comes with Rick Pitino and pretty much all of Rick Pitino's career, especially the way things ended at Louisville.
Also, he's 70 years old.
He is also 70 years old, and he looks like Skeletor. That is possibly problematic. The last part, not really important, but it's also true. I think this is a good move, though, for St. John's. You don't need him to be your Jim Boeheim, right? You don't need him to be there for 40 years. And if Rick Pitino could coach for 40-something years,
107-year-old Rick Pitino,
I would love to know.
Reaching his 18th Final Four.
Yeah, I'd love to know how, what serum he got injected into him every 8 hours to exist to that degree.
We had a texter from the 785 asked if Luke Carnesecca, 98 years old, was. I don't know if he's that old. I just remember one of my favorite 30 for 30s on ESPN was the Requiem for the Big East.
Mm-hmm.
And Luke Carnesecca is one of the talking heads in that video, and he looks like he is 178 years old. In that film.
Good for Luke Carnesecca that he is still around. He apparently gave a quote, by the way, to Fox 5 New York that said, "It's Rick Pitino or no one." So I'm glad they got Rick Pitino. Good for him. And if you can live to be 98 years old, God bless you and more power to you.
Man, yeah, I hope I'm still kicking around and giving good sports takes at 98 years old.
His face looks like a cheese pizza.
Of course, I can hear you all saying, "Hey, why start now?"
Yeah, well. Do you know what Luke Carnesecca's full first name is?
Is it like Aloysius?
No, it's Luigi, which rules.
That's even better.
Great name. Luigi is a great name.
It is.
Awesome.
Do you know where St. John's ranks all time among Division I men's basketball programs in wins?
I mean, it's got to be pretty high. They have a pretty storied history.
They are 9th all time.
9th all time
in wins.
Do they have a championship?
They do not.
Okay.
They have a Helms championship in 1911. So.
That counts. 1911 national champions, St. John's. Hang the banner. It counts.
They reached a title game in 1952. They went to another Final Four in 1985.
Do you know who they beat or who they lost to in 1952?
Kansas.
That would be Kansas.
Yeah.
Cumulus Clyde, yeah.
Anyway, They haven't been to an Elite Eight or a Sweet 16 since 1999. They've been to the tournament just 5 times since the turn of the century: 2000, 2002, 2011, 2015, and 2019. They have not won a conference title since 2000.
Man,
A tournament championship. They haven't won a regular season conference championship since 1992.
It's been a long time.
And the thing about St. John's is, like, I roll my eyes whenever I hear the description of Northwestern as Chicago's Big Ten team. But St. John's is New York's team. When they call themselves that, like, they really are. Like, that's where they go in Coming to America. They go to a St. John's game at Madison Square Garden.
Well, did you see where they're going to do the introductory press conference tomorrow? At MSG.
Yeah. Like, there's some history, and there have been great coaches in charge of this program. And, it just, like, Hall of Fame coaches, Joe Lapchick, Frank McGuire, Lou Carnesecca. And in the last few years, it's been guys like Mike Anderson and Chris Mullen. Remember that? Remember he was their head coach?
I do remember that. Yeah.
Mike Dunlap, who, shout out to him and his success at Metro State, but, like, that was a bad year. Steve Lavin had a winning record there, but, like, they didn't do anything to note when Steve Lavin was there.
No.
So Norm Roberts was, of course, before that.
Of course.
It has always been a program that feels like it should be better. Like, guys like Marquise Noel shouldn't get out of New York City.
No, they should be playing for St. John's.
Right.
And to that point,
there should be an appeal to the city players. And, like, we're about to see 2 city point guards in Marquise Noel and Tyson Walker, 2 NYC guys, hook up in the Sweet 16 at Madison Square Garden. I guarantee you, St. John's never even thought about recruiting those guys.
No. Do you know where Rick Pitino started his pro coaching career without looking?
Pro?
Yeah, like like as an adult post-playing career, like not as a grad assistant.
Oh, man.
But where he started his career.
I knew this at one time.
It's awesome, by the way. And like when you hear this, you'll think, how did they not win every game knowing what Rick Pitino has done in his career and where this location is?
So I'm able to pick up the story at Providence, but there was obviously a before Providence.
So he was, prior to that, an assistant with the Knicks.
Uh-huh.
He was the head coach at Boston University.
Right.
He was an assistant for 2 seasons at Syracuse. And he spent 2 years as an assistant at the University of Hawaii. How did they not win every game? How did they not get every good recruit? Rick Pitino dropping bags, dropping hookers. You come to Hawaii to play for Rick Pitino?
Hey, Pitino, a wild boy. I'm sure he loved Hawaii.
Oh, my God. Mid-70s Hawaii with Rick Pitino would have been insane. How did they not win all the time? Because I actually learned that the other day, and I'm looking at his Wikipedia right now. I'm pretty sure they stunk at the time. Like, how did they not win all the time with Rick Pitino? So that's the biggest one of the day. The next biggest story, or maybe biggest, depending on how you look at it, is a Big East coach poach. Georgetown has hired Ed Cooley away from Providence. Ed Cooley won a lot of games at Providence. Has only been to one Sweet 16. That was last year. They lost to Kansas. People forget that. But he's been a really damn good coach at Providence for a long time. And I think he is awesome. I love hearing him talk. This was also pretty obvious over the last week that this was going to happen. A good win for Georgetown. Georgetown needs something because Patrick Ewing was a disaster.
Another program that even more accomplished than St. John's. Obviously, they have a national championship that was like on color television.
Yeah.
And
on television, period.
This will be the first time since 1972 that somebody not affiliated with John Thompson is going to be the head coach.
Wow.
At Georgetown. Like, they rode that as long as they possibly could because, it was John Thompson. Then I forget who it was after John Thompson, but then it was John Thompson the third. And then, for a while it was Patrick Ewing, and he won him a Big East tournament championship. But that is another program, city program, Washington, D.C. There's a lot of talent comes out of D.C., a lot of talent coming out of the DMV. And for a very long time, Georgetown has lost out on that talent, hasn't been able to maintain that level of talent. there are disadvantages today to being a smaller private school in a major city that didn't maybe exist so much in the 80s. But there may now be in the NIL era the potential to regain some advantages for those programs. And I mean, I'm not so you're going to hear a lot of, I'm sure, East Coast voices in the sports media say, man, the sport really needs Georgetown and St. John's to be good. Like, no.
Yeah, I disagree on that one.
We've been fine. Like, college basketball has been fine the last 20 years without those guys in the mix, but it would certainly, bring back some old memories for a certain generation of college basketball fan, for Georgetown, St. John's to mean something again, or for St. John's, Villanova to mean something again, or for, Georgetown, UConn to mean something again. Like the Big East, it's never coming back. Like Syracuse is in the ACC now. Like it's never going to come back the way that it was. But
it's still a good league.
Yes, and Ed Cooley's a good coach, and I think he's going to have some success at Georgetown.
I think he will. Like if I had a kid who was being recruited at that level and Ed Cooley came and sat in my living room, I would imagine, and I've gotten to hear Ed Cooley speak in person, I would probably say, like, yeah, son, you should have them on your list. I'm not going to tell you where to go. You should keep that team on your list because that guy is awesome. The guy who might replace him, word is right now from multiple insiders, Kim English, who we all know from Missouri, NBA career for a little bit, has been coaching at George Mason the last couple of years. Oh, we've got some breaking KU news, by the way, although it's not surprising at all. Cam Martin's in the transfer portal. Good luck.
Transferring back to the MIAA, perhaps?
Should have transferred to a career in Europe 2 years ago. More power to him. No hard feelings, but he got a championship out of it.
Yes, he did.
He will always be a national champion.
He will always be a national champion. He got to play for Kansas. He got to play in a game for the University of Kansas, which is...
He played in the Border War.
Yeah. Dream come true for a lot of people. Like, he had a great college career at Missouri Southern prior to that. I'm not knocking Cam Martin in the least, but I do think there is a lucrative professional career in a country that I maybe can't pronounce ahead of him, and that he should definitely start to pursue it.
But Kim English, speaking of Border War, rumored to be the next head coach at Providence. My only interaction or like experience with Kim English as a coach, as a head coach, is that he called out Jesse Newell for something Jesse wrote. Jesse quoted him directly, and then Kim English complained about a quote getting used in a story. Good luck. Best of luck to Providence. I don't know if that's going to work out, but the only experience I have with him as a pro is being a tool. So best of luck.
What about this rumor? Mike Bray, who retired in air quotes from Notre Dame, really was like asked to, like, Notre Dame told him, if you don't retire, we're going to have to fire you because it's not.
And we really, really, really don't want to fire you.
Yes, we love you and don't want to fire you, but this ain't working anymore. And it's time to move on. Mike Bray, apparently retirement not going to last super long for old Mike Bray, because South Florida is interested in perhaps making him their next head coach.
Look, for Mike Bray, this makes tons of sense. You still get to coach at a high level. Not that the AAC is a good league, but I mean, it's relatively good. I mean, it's better than a lot of mid-majors or low majors. You get to go to South Florida, worst places to be. I don't really get this from South Florida's perspective, though. Like, is Mike Bray going to bring you back or bring you to any level of, like, prominence? I mean, that league stinks. And without Houston, it's really going to stink. And Cincinnati's going to be gone. I don't know, man.
There's no real track record of basketball success at South Florida.
No, none.
Have they ever been good?
It's not a horrible hiring, but I don't know. I don't think it's going to move. I don't think it's going to change a whole lot, frankly.
This might just be Mike Bray deciding, I'll live in Tampa.
I guess, yeah.
They've been to the NCAA tournament a grand total of 3 times. 1990, 1992, and 2012. They've won 1 tournament game in their history.
I mean, I didn't know they had ever won any.
You know who their head coach was when they won that tournament game? Stan Heath.
Oh. Yeah, best of luck to both parties. I have no strong feelings one way or the other about South Florida.
They did win the CBI in 2019. So maybe I'm selling South Florida Bulls basketball a little short.
Good for them. It's something.
It certainly is.
Not everyone gets to play in that. I think that mostly covers it for our coaching news today.
Yes, I believe you are correct. Let's get into some news from the world of baseball. The World Baseball Classic, one berth in the championship game is set. The United States dominating Cuba last night in Miami, 14-2. No mercy rule in the semifinals and championship game. So that one went the full 9, despite the United States taking a 12-run lead into I believe they led by 11 going into the 7th inning. Trey Turner with 2 more home runs following up his heroic grand slam on Saturday in the come-from-behind victory over Venezuela. So the defending champs are back in the final. They await the winner of tonight's game between Mexico and Japan. If you are interested in baseball, there's no basketball tonight. There's no men's basketball tonight. I should specify. The women's tournament is ongoing. But there's no men's tournament action going on tonight. If you are intrigued at all with baseball, 6 o'clock FS1, check out 21-year-old Japan starting pitcher Roki Sasaki. Dude is throwing triple digits with insane breaking stuff. He is the next great one out of the country of Japan. And you can see him pitching against Mexico tonight in the World Baseball Classic. So that might be pretty cool if you are inclined to think that baseball is cool.
14-2 was the final score?
Yes.
That's a whopping.
Well, Cuba got 1 in the first after 3 infield hits in a row and then a bases loaded walk. And I was starting to rev up the Twitter fingers to say some mean things about Adam Wainwright and how maybe we shouldn't be pitching a guy who was alive for the Bay of Pigs invasion here in this massive World Baseball Classic game in 2023. But then he settled down, got the side in order after that without allowing any other runs. Paul Goldschmidt hit a 2-run homer in the bottom of the first inning, and the route was on.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, the Team USA lineup, as it turns out, when Trey Turner is your 9-hole hitter, you have a pretty good lineup.
Well, that's the thing. Like, you would think, and there's tons of great players from Puerto Rico. There's tons of great players from the Dominican Republic and Cuba as well. But, like, look at that U.S. lineup. It's preposterous.
Yeah.
Trey Turner is awesome. And if he's your 9-hitter, you should be whooping teams.
I know that there are people that are either slow or uninterested in jumping on the World Baseball Classic bandwagon. Even people who are baseball fans, it's not for them. They don't really get that wrapped up in it. Let me use this as the pitch for, if you are listening to this, I'm assuming you are American. And this is my pitch for rooting for Team USA.
If not, though, let us know.
Yeah, seriously. If you're listening from outside the country, I don't know what your text rates are, but you can text us 785-272-9429 or hit us up in the YouTube comments. Let me make this the elevator pitch for getting invested in Team USA in the World Baseball Classic. You get to root for Mookie Betts and Mike Trout.
Yeah, that's good enough for me.
They're on your team when this event is going on. Also, Nolan Arenado is. And let me tell you, that's a joy I once had and remember fondly and miss literally every day. But, like, you get to root for them on your side when you watch the World Baseball Classic and you root for Team USA. So that is my elevator pitch. You get to root for awesome baseball guys doing awesome baseball stuff, including hanging 14 runs on Cuba, who at least look sharp in their red-on-red uniforms.
Yeah, those are pretty nice. So the ideal outcome is, well, I don't know. I mean, either one could be ideal, either Japan or Mexico. You get a fun matchup either way.
Yes, and a chance for revenge for the United States. Mexico wins because Mexico beat them in the group stage. Poor Brady Singer had himself a rough one in that one. A question from the text line from the 785 asking about Cuba's team and whether they get to use expats and or defectors. Yes and no is the answer to that question. There are some active major leaguers who are on the Cuban roster. Yohan Moncada, Luis Roberts of both of the White Sox. I think there were a couple of others. I also know that their starting catcher literally defected after the game last night.
Oh.
Yes.
Love when geopolitics and sports align.
So it used to be if you defected if you were a Cuban playing in the major leagues, you did not represent Cuba in an international competition. This is the first time that active major league players have represented Cuba in the World Baseball Classic. So that is a change in philosophy, a change in policy there. But is it as loaded a Cuba roster as it could have been? No. Is it still pretty darn good? Yeah.
Look, I know that Adam Wainwright was not alive in the early 1960s, but I did need to look up when he was born just to get a good grasp on how old exactly he is. He was not alive for the Bay of Pigs. The best I could find in 1981, he was alive for Ric Flair winning his first World Heavyweight Championship, which happened in Kansas City. Beat Dusty Rhodes. So there you go. That's how old. That is how old Adam Wainwright is.
You know what's really sick is like I'm looking at Adam Wainwright making old jokes about Adam Wainwright, and then I look at myself and realize I probably went to college with people who were born in the same year as Adam Wainwright.
You're younger than him, though.
Yes.
I know that for a fact. You
I
are
am.
not 41 years old.
I am. Yes.
He made his MLB debut while you were in college.
Yeah. Been around a long time.
So there you go. He's probably going to get to his 200th win this season. Hall of Famer, Adam Wainwright?
No.
No, probably not. 3-time All-Star, 1-time World Series.
Great pitcher. I bet they retire his number in St. Louis. Put him in the Cardinals Hall of Fame. I don't know these Major League Baseball Hall of Famer. No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that.
Hall of very good for me. Yeah.
We will get to some NFL free agent news coming up on the other side of this break. Plus, we will talk a little bit about what the Chiefs maybe should do at wide receiver with the market drying up there a little bit. Of course, those were our 580 Sports Talk headlines. We'll come back with more 580 Sports Talk after this on 580 WIBW. .30 on 580 Sports Talk with Brendan and Dan. Thank you so much for stopping by on this Monday afternoon. Comment in on the YouTube comment section, from Mark, who says the World Baseball Classic is good for baseball. At least it should be. Yeah, I would agree it is.
Yeah, I mean, the crowds have been great. Everybody involved in participating in it is having a great time, except for, I guess, the two high-profile players who've suffered major injuries, Edwin Diaz and Jose Altuve. They're maybe not having as much fun with the injury part of it, but no, it looks like a good time. And the people people who are at the games are obviously also having a blast.
Mhm.
And it just like, we need more of that in our American baseball culture. Like, it's okay to have fun. It's okay for baseball to be fun.
That's why it's so smart to put some of these games in Miami, where you can get Cuban fans and Dominican fans.
Yeah, having it in Miami is the perfect place for it. Real quick follow-up to the question we had about the Cuban players. There was a concession made between the Cuban and U.S. governments to allow major league players to perform in this year's World Baseball Classic. That's why Moncada and Robert are in it. There were others who were either not invited by the Cuban Baseball Federation or just not interested. One of them, who fled Cuba in 2015 and is currently the main reason Mexico is in the semifinals tonight, Randy Arozarena.
Huh. Interesting.
Who told media in Spanish earlier this week, I want to face Cuba in the final and hopefully we beat them.
I love it. I love Randy Arozarena.
Another question from the 785 about the World Baseball Classic. Does World Baseball Classic have a pitch clock? If not, I may watch. Yeah, it does not have any of the new Major League Baseball rules.
Yeah, so I saw some chatter about this, must have been last night, that, hey, the bases are totally normal sized. There's no pitch clock. There's no ghost runner rule, none of that. And guess what? The games have been awesome, and they have been a lot of fun, and people are engaged. Maybe that should indicate that the problem is not what Major League Baseball thinks it is, and it's actually just fine the way it is.
I don't disagree with that. I'm also here to tell you that, like, at least on the pitch clock, I've come around. Y'all are going to like the pitch clock. I'm just telling you, you're going to like the pitch clock. It's not going to be real invasive. You're going to get used to it. You're going to like it a lot. I'm just putting it out there. And I am as old school a baseball guy as it is possible to be. And I was very much anti this when they first started talking about it, when they first implemented it. But having watched some spring training games, I'm just telling you, I don't want the networks to put it on TV. Like, if they can avoid putting it on TV, I don't want to see it at all times. I think that would be bad, but it's not going to be like right behind the backstop, right behind the batter, like it is at a lot of these spring training sites. I think you're going to like it. I think you're going to enjoy the games. The pace of the games is going to be agreeable to you.
I think for me, even more so than actively liking it, I think by May, no one's going to notice it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, because that's what people are up in arms about. Oh, they ended a game because the guy wasn't in the batter's box and they called an automatic strike. Well, yeah, that's bad. I promise you that is not going to happen in a real game.
And if it does happen, you deserve it.
Yeah, and if it happened, you probably had it coming. But yeah, like a month into the season, they're going to be like maybe one pitch clock infraction every like 2 days across all of Major League Baseball. We're barely going to notice it's there. We're just going to say, oh man, this is a very briskly played game. There was all of the same action, but now I have 30 extra minutes at the end of my evening. This is nice. I went to the K to watch a baseball game and I got home in a decent time.
Yeah. Hey, for those of us who have to commute home from the K, and it's quite a drive, yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. Did want to get to a little bit real quick on the NFL. A couple more free agent signings today. In fact, a lot of free agent signings today. The big one, CJ Gardner-Johnson signs with the Lions for 1 year. That deal is unbelievably team-friendly to the Lions. And the story goes that the Eagles made an offer to CJ Gardner-Johnson. He turned it down at first, or his agents turned it down, thinking he was going to get more money. The Eagles then pivoted to re-signing James Bradberry and re-signing Darius Slay. And, what's the Des Bryant line? No room, little bro. Is that what he said that one time that he got cut right after? That's essentially what happened to CJ Gardner-Johnson. The market for safeties has been awful. So he ended up going to the Lions for a 1 year deal for effectively no money. It's an incredible deal. That the Lions are one of the biggest winners in free agency for getting that done. That's huge. We also know today the Houston Texans have been busy. They signed tight end Dalton Schultz to a 1 year deal and running back Devin Singletary as their number 2 running back. Those are both really good moves, I think, for a team that's going to have a young quarterback. We also know Trent Sherfield went from the Dolphins, wide receiver, to the Buffalo Bills, and then had a quote which almost went viral, but then he corrected himself. He said, well, if you want to play for an elite quarterback, you come to Buffalo. And Miami fans said, hey, wait a minute. What are you saying about Tua? And he said, it's not because of Tua. The Dolphins just didn't want me.
He's their Isaiah McKenzie replacement. They released McKenzie a couple days ago. Feels like maybe he's a better version of McKenzie?
I like Sherfield. I think he's a nice player. He's not great, but he's the number 3 receiver. You can certainly get by with that. And there was one other signing that happened today that I think I am missing, but I cannot.
Are we on to
Mac
the
Hollins.
receivers? Yeah,
yes, Mac Hollins, former Raider. He signed for just 1 year, $2.5 million with the Falcons. I don't think he's worth $10 million a year, but I thought a year for $5 million or something certainly. So another good deal there. Have you thought free agency's been weird this year? Kind of a dry market.
Yeah, I guess I have. It always unfolds like this, right? Where you got the guys that are most in demand, they get the big money deals like right off the rip.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's after a couple of days when it slows a bit more to a trickle, you get guys taking 1-year deals because teams, after they hand out the big money, they start to be a little bit more judicious with their cap space because they're going to be, post June 1 cuts. They're going to be guys that come available. There's obviously the draft, and there might be some maneuvering that goes on around the draft. Like you think about this time last year, the Tyreek Hill trade hadn't happened yet.
Mm-hmm.
The Devontae Adams trade, I don't believe it happened yet.
Mm-hmm.
So like there's a lot more maneuvering, I think, still to go on. And I think a lot of teams maybe keeping their powder dry in the instance that a trade opportunity arises and they need the cap room to inherit a contract.
The Chiefs' biggest need that they will probably address in free agency or, pre-draft anyway, is right now at wide receiver. I think everyone pretty much agrees on that. The market for wide receivers has been not especially bustling, but again, that's because of the talent that was available too. Once upon a time, Jarvis Landry and Julio Jones and Odell Beckham all being free agents, there would have been, $500 million being thrown around, but those guys aren't those guys anymore. Jacoby Myers and Alan Lazard and Juju Smith-Schuster were your best wide receivers available.
And they all got essentially the same contract, at least the same average annual value.
So if you're the Chiefs at this point, you could go after DJ Chark, who we both like, who I think would be a good addition for this team. But you brought this up to me earlier. If you really want to make a splash and add a true game changer kind of player, the trade market is probably where you have to go. And I was looking at the contracts that receivers have signed. We went over the ones that were signed today. Mac Hollins, $2.5 million for 1 year. 1 year deal for Trent Sherfield. Lazard, $11 million a year. Same for Myers. Same for Smith-Schuster. Adam Thielen got 3 years for $25 million. There's an out after year 2 for $18.2 million. Like, that's not a whole lot for a guy who's been pretty good. Robert Woods, 2 years, just over $7.5 million a year. Those guys are fine, but they're not game changer receivers, at least not at this point of their careers. Matt Verderame brought up, what about DeAndre Hopkins? He's out there, he is available. The Cardinals have made that known. He is out there for a trade. Chiefs have a ton of picks. If it's a reasonable price, I would say, yeah, go get that dude. I was looking up guys who are going to be free agents within the next couple of years, so you might be able to go get. Hell, Brandon Cooks was traded today.
Yes,
we didn't mention that earlier.
I was just going to get to him.
Brandon Cooks got traded by Houston. He did not want to be in Houston. He said he thought they were going to win, and then they weren't, and they clearly weren't trying to, and he was pissed. He'd been PO'd there for a couple of years. The Texans only got a 5th this year and a future 6th for Brandon Cooks.
Yeah.
Hell, I know he's got
2 years removed from a 90-catch, 1,000-yard season.
I know he's got big cap hits. If I was the Chiefs, I absolutely would have done that. I'd figure out the cap later.
Mm-hmm.
Brandon Cooks, because he's only ever played for bad teams, and I guess he went to the playoffs with the Rams, but he's been really damn good his whole career. He's got multiple 1,000-yard seasons. I would have done that in a heartbeat if I was the Chiefs. So that, to me, though, says, Dan, that if you want to get that kind of receiver, you probably have to move some picks to get him. And I would be okay with that, honestly, because the Chiefs have so many picks.
Well, I think, that's always kind of been what you suspected. But the fact that Cooks is a 5th and a future 6th, I don't think the Cardinals are getting a 1st for DeAndre Hopkins.
Oh, no way.
There's no way the Broncos are getting a 1st for Jerry Jeudy. I know there's been reports about them listing on Jeudy and Cortland Sutton. They're not getting a 1st for those guys.
No.
Could you even get a 5th for Cortland Sutton at this point in his career? I'm not sure you could.
Conditional 5th? Based on, snaps played or something, maybe?
Yeah, and I don't think the Broncos are going to do any deals with the Chiefs as it is. I don't think, they're not going to trade players for picks with a division rival. That's a non-starter. But DeAndre Hopkins, I think there are valid questions about him at his age and how much he can give a new team at this stage in his career. But would it be worth like a day 2 or a day 3 pick to find out? Yeah, I'd much more into that than the idea of giving away a day 1 pick or a second round pick.
Oh, yeah, there's no doubt about that. If I'm pulling up the Chiefs picks they have this year, these specific ones. They've got a first, second, a third, 2 fourths. Like if you told me right now, you can have DeAndre Hopkins, we're going to eat them. You're not going to have to eat any extra salary for a second and a fourth. Honestly, I would do it. I would say yes. Let's do that.
I think I would do that too.
Because what player in the second round is likely going to be as good as 2 years of DeAndre Hopkins?
I don't know. Like you got Sky Moore in the second round last year, so that there's your answer. Do you think DeAndre Hopkins can produce more in the offense over the next 2 years than Sky Moore last year and this coming year?
Yes.
I think so too.
I like Sky Moore, but yes.
You're firmly in a Super Bowl winning window. Like, yeah, I think that's a little more palatable now, considering that the market has been set. Like Brandon Cooks isn't the player that DeAndre Hopkins is, but he's had a heck of a nice career. They're around the same age. Cooks is 29.
I'd rather have Cooks than I would Jacoby Myers.
Yes.
No doubt in my mind, in fact. Players. Okay, so I looked this up earlier and I pulled it up again right now. Players who will be free agents in 2 years. So Hopkins is in that category. Cooks is in that category where you're trading for them. You're going to move some picks. You're going to get at least 1 year out of them. And then essentially you can decide, do you want to keep them for 2? Do you want to extend them? Or do you just say, hey, thanks for the memories. 1 year is enough. And there are guys out there who are at least interesting, I think. Hopkins is number 1 on that list. You mentioned that guys who are in the division, you're probably not going to be able to get in a deal. Keenan Allen's one of them. Keenan Allen's also just not a Chiefs type of receiver.
No.
And then Tim Patrick is on that list. He's coming off the torn ACL. Denver's obviously going to keep him around. But guys who also fit in that category: Chris Godwin, Amari Cooper, Deontay Johnson, Renfro, another divisional guy, Russell Gage, Zay Jones, Cedric Wilson in Miami, who they just got last year, Darius Slayton with the Giants, who they're bringing back. Like any guy of that caliber, I would say, yeah, I would certainly be interested in one of those guys for a day 2 and a day 3 pick. I would certainly move for, because again, any guy who I just listed, are you going to get a player of that caliber in the second round? The answer is probably not.
No.
So any of those dudes, I would say, yeah, go try to make a move for them. You're also running into younger guys who will have their rookie contracts expiring. Like Terrace Marshall, I think, really came on for Carolina at the end of last year. He's not getting moved. Nico Collins is the best wide receiver that Houston has right now because they moved Brandon Cooks. So he's not going to end up going anywhere. But a player of that caliber, yeah, I would certainly make a trade for them. I mean, that's probably where you're going to find the maximum value at this point. I was reading a piece from The Ringer today, and Steven Ruiz, who does a great job for them, about how if you want blockbuster moves in the NFL now, it's not free agency. It's the trade market. And I need to pull up this list that he had of guys who have been traded in recent years versus guys who have been acquired in free agency. So here's the list of guys who have been the biggest free agent signings over the last couple of years once we get our internet to load. Okay. So since 2020, your biggest free agent signings: Tom Brady, kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
Von Miller, Javon Hargrave, Jesse Bates III, Mike McGlinchey, Christian Kirk, Orlando Brown Jr., Derek Carr, J.C. Jackson. They're good players.
And Mike McGlinchey. Here
are the players who have been traded since 2020. Jalen Ramsey, DeAndre Hopkins, DeForest Buckner, Trent Williams, Matt Stafford, also Orlando Brown Jr., Stephon Gilmore a couple of times, also Von Miller, Russell Wilson, Khalil Mack, Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, A.J. Brown. The list goes on.
Like, those are all pros.
Those are Christian McCaffrey. Those are superstar players. Those free agents, I mean, old Tom Brady, Von Miller, they're good players.
Yeah.
Javon Hargrave, good player. But the superstars come on the trade market. I've gone back and forth on Hopkins as a Chiefs option. I know he doesn't really fit the Chiefs mold, but he's such a great talent. I think it would be worth it. I would make that move. If you say 2 picks, a day 2 and a day 3, I'd make that move because you're not going to find that value anywhere else.
No, I don't think you are either.
Let's get to a quick timeout. When we come back, I've got a college basketball trivia question for Dan. I'd love for you to play along as well. We'll get to that next on 580 Sports Talk. Finishing things up on 580 Sports Talk on this Monday afternoon, Brendan Dworzinski, Dan Lucero here with you. So we mentioned it briefly earlier on in the show, and it really could have been a headline in and of itself. St. Francis College of Brooklyn, New York, is getting rid of athletics at the end of the spring season. They're just gone. They're going to honor scholarships for athletes, but they are just getting rid of athletics. Sounds like the school just has zero money. They moved buildings. They owned 2 buildings as a college. It's amazing they were Division I in the first place. And now they sold their 2. They moved into a new building, and that included their athletic facility. So they're just like, yeah, we're done with sports. We're getting out of the game entirely. Hartford is dropping from D1 to D3. St. Francis just said, nah, we're done. We're done.
Yeah, and the drop in like from D1 to D3, that happens. Like that's not like Hartford is doing it. Birmingham Southern College did it.
Centenary
has done it in Louisiana. So that's not uncommon, but it is very uncommon to see a Division I athletic program decide, yeah, we're getting out of the sports business entirely. For a university to say, yeah, we're done with sports.
Now, St. Francis of Brooklyn was one of the original Division I, University Division I teams. They've been D1 as long as D1 has existed. They never made the NCAA tournament. They got close in 2015. They lost their conference championship game. So they will have gone all the way through the history of Division I and the University Division, never made the NCAA tournament when they shutter their program. Can you name the other 3 programs that have always been Division I? So not like Merrimack or a program like that, or a team that has recently come up to D1, but teams that have always been Division I and never made the NCAA men's basketball tournament.
Boy, probably not, but I'll give it a go.
There are 3.
And they've always, so charter members of Division I, how far back does that go?
Now I believe this extends all the way back to 1957.
1957.
So when it was the university division, because if it only went up to, because some schools like went from D1 to D2 and then back, like New Hampshire and Maine did that for some reason. But yeah, these schools all the way back to the 50s.
All the way back to the 50s and have never made the NCAA tournament. I'm going to guess one of them is a Ivy League school.
Incorrect. All the Ivies have been.
Okay. How about?
You're on the right coast, though.
Okay. Yeah, it's kind of what I thought.
Yeah.
These would be like, East Coast schools, like maybe a Patriot League school.
You are getting warm with that.
How about American?
American has been. That's a good guess, but American has been. 2 of these schools have something in common. Well, sort of in common.
How about Long Island? No, Long Island University?
They have, not since they merged their multiple campuses, but yes, LIU Brooklyn has been.
Okay.
Which is now their main campus.
Yes, they're the Sharks.
Yeah, they are.
I saw them. They play hockey now. Yes, one night on ESPN Plus, I saw LIU was playing a home game against Alaska Anchorage.
What a trip.
They're independent.
Yeah.
They're not in a conference, but they're Division I hockey.
Polar Bears.
Yeah. So I'm on the right track in terms of like conference, but Albany? No,
Albany's been.
They've been.
They're also in the America East.
Yeah, that's right. Oh man. The other St. Francis?
St. Francis, Pennsylvania has been.
Okay. Oh boy.
Just a few years ago, in fact, I think they made it.
Stony Brook. No. They went under Steve.
Yeah, they've been.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I'm tapped out.
William and Mary.
Oh, wow.
They've never been. Yeah, William and Mary. That's tough. The other 2, I said they were similar, at least kind of. Army has never been to the NCAA tournament. And they're in the Patriot League in basketball. The other one, the Citadel.
The Citadel.
The military college of South Carolina.
Yeah. No Navy. We know Navy went. They had David Robinson on campus. Tallest sailor ever.
Right.
Went to the Elite 8.
But yeah, so we're down. And again, there are multiple teams that have never been. Like Bethune-Cookman has never been, but they haven't always been Division I.
Very funny guess from the 785. They guessed Nebraska.
Ha! Now, never won a tournament game. They would certainly be on that list.
Yes.
We've got to get to another timeout. We'll come back, finish up this edition of 580 Sports Talk with the final word. How about we finish up this edition of 580 Sports Talk with a quick final word? Dan, you're up first.
There have been a lot of great players in Kansas State basketball history, accomplished players, All-Americans, players with their numbers in the rafters at Bramlage Coliseum. But at least in modern Kansas State basketball history, there have been few who have been more influential, more important than Marquise Noel. His role in helping to jumpstart this program under Jerome Tang in his first year on the bench and in his senior season. He could have left like everybody else. He and Ish Massoud are the ones who stayed, and Noel in particular is the one who led the way. And he and his teammates and his coach and their crazy faith are in the Sweet 16. That is pretty special and a pretty cool legacy for Marquise Noel to leave.
K-State has never been to the Sweet 16 in the first year under a head coach before. That has changed. They have only twice been further than the Sweet 16 since the tournament expanded to 64 teams. And I will ask you earnestly, why can't this team do it? Michigan State is good. They're well coached. They are beatable. Tennessee, they are coached by Rick Barnes. Florida Atlantic does not have the kind of talent K-State does. I'm not saying it is a guarantee. It is absolutely not a guarantee, in fact, of advancing even further in March. But this year's K-State team absolutely has the potential to, and at this point, no one should be shocked if they're able to get even further than this Sweet 16 run. We will talk more NCAA tournament coming up throughout the week on 580 Sports Talk on the Lewis Toyota Road to a Championship. Tomorrow, we will continue talking about the end of the KU season and what's to come in their offseason with Michael Swain. Plus, we've got a short show tomorrow, only until 5:30, so we'll jam it full of great information for you. Until then, for Dan Lucero, I'm Brendan Dworzinski. Thanks for listening to 580 Sports Talk.